I'm tired of playing my favorite tabletop RPGs as one of the old boring races. I don't want those generic, store-brand backstories. I want to roll a character with a bit more character. Well, Roll for Combat is here to help with their incredible new book, Battle Zoo Ancestry's Classic Creatures, which gives you the power to create the character of your dreams. Dig into 12 unique playable monster races in this beautifully printed, massive, hard-cover book filled with in-depth descriptions, abilities, lore, and more. Send that dusty old dwarf right back to the mines and live out your isekai fantasy by becoming an actual intelligent weapon that you wield yourself. Or you could let a friend grab you instead. Teamwork. Put that elf back on the shelf and become a sentient dungeon, complete with traps, treasures, and a living avatar. You could even put an end to the age of man and become a shape-shifting mimic. You know, those things that gave you trust issues ever since you were eaten by one in Dark Souls? Ooh, that could be you. Click the link below or head on over to battlezoo.com to secure your copy of Battle Zoo Ancestry's Classic Creatures today and become the life of your adventuring party.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Roll for Combat. We are live on a Tuesday, which we normally don't do. But since we just started the backer kit, it's not a Kickstarter, it's a backer kit, because everything is a Kickstarter now. So I think Kickstarter is a verb. I think it just became Kickstarter, like Xerox or Mouse or any of those things. But today, if you pledge, you can get this little guy here. See this? Look at that. Do you want one of these, Val? Do you want to mimic?
I want one of these. It has teeth. Anything that has teeth, it sounds great.
Yikes. Okay, well, we're starting off with a bang. So yes, this thing has teeth, and this is the Mimic Dice Guardian. It will guard your dice, and this actually hurts. Ow! That actually does hurt if it like stomps on you. So be careful. But it's pretty big. Look at it. It holds a lot of dice. So if you pledge in the first 2 days, you get this for free, and you can just go to yearofmonsters.com or go to backerkit.rollforcombat.com or kickstarter.rollforcombat.com or go to battlezoo.com. You'll be able to find it. Or you click on the link up there. Really, really easy to find. So if you do that, and there's a book that comes along with the Mimic, kind of forgot about that. That's actually the whole point of it. I know. Well, you know, people.
It's about to fund too, so you could be the one that puts it over.
It's pretty close.
It's like, yeah, it's like
$800 in that fund. So
it's over 95% funded.
Yeah. So what happened is that this is a weird backer kit for us because we kind of allowed people to pre-order this hardcover a while ago, like 2 years ago, like when we first started this back, like literally 2022. And we got some orders, but not enough. And we've got just enough to make it an actual real print run where we print a real book, you know, like something like this, as opposed to like print on demand, which is good, but we like, you know, our print books are much better in quality than print on demand. We do really deluxe printings. And then on top of that, I went crazy with the special edition and like put on gold leaf and UV print and black matte and gold foil, and it's nuts. That will be like, I think our special editions are nice. But this thing, holy crap, take a look at it. Even I'm just like, damn, that thing looks good. Mark couldn't believe it.
That cover was definitely really cool.
It's really,
and the Dice
really
Guardian
cool.
is something that Linda keeps asking me, we're going to get the Dice Guardian too, right, Mark? And our previous incentive, she was never like, Mark, I want to make sure we get that scroll case for Dice. I mean, it was cool, but she didn't keep asking for it. She asked about the Mimic every time. I'm like, don't worry, Linda. We'll get the Mimic.
You'll get a Mimic. Don't worry, you'll get a Mimic. Got to get them made. Got to see how many, but they're actually made by hand. They're actually cast, molded, made by hand. It's actually a lot of work. I was kind of surprised, but I found the place.
You've removed the teeth by hand of so many creatures for it.
Pretty much. Well, the Mimic. Yeah. So the book we're doing is Classic Creatures, so you can play a Mimic. We actually have it that you can play a Mimic in D&D or Pathfinder. So there you go. Anyhow, Val, Who are you? What are you doing here? What's your
my.
thing?
I don't know. My thing, I'm Val. Hi. And I have a YouTube channel called Corkboards and Curiosities where I talk about TTRPG stuff. I like mystery and horror and roleplay, and that tends to come up pretty often. Yeah,
What's your
which
favorite?
might make sense why I like teeth.
What's
Yeah.
your favorite mystery and horrors? Give us a couple examples of some of your favorites.
Like in TTRPG,
In media,
I
yeah,
don't know.
just in general
I play
media.
a lot of like
No, just
in
like
general
movies,
media.
TV shows,
Mm.
books.
I feel like when it comes to mystery, I can't say. Like at this point, like I don't think I will ever find a piece of media I love as much as I have loved Knives Out. I mean,
Oh, really? Wow.
it's Knives Out. Yeah, I mean, it's just I needed like a whodunit where I could piece it together as it was playing out. It was great. And for horror, I've enjoyed the remake of Suspiria very much.
Oh, really?
And I'm absolutely not biased by the fact that it has Tilda Swinton in it,
Oh.
even though I love Tilda Swinton.
And isn't it? Is it French? It's kind of French, a little, sort
Is
of.
it Italian? I think actually, I think the original Italian, right?
Right, Italian. That's what Sorry, Italian. Sorry, I knew it was
Yeah,
European. I couldn't
think.
remember. Yeah, the original I think was Italian. Well, it has that European feel to it, definitely.
Yeah.
But Knives Out, wow, that's not one I expected. It's so
Really?
recent. Yeah, that's
No, it's really recent, but I mean, it did really well. I think I don't know. I mean, I just love the interactivity of it and being able to kind of have fun with it and try to piece it together as I'm watching. Just being like an active viewer, I think was really cool.
Since you are young, and you probably have never heard of any of these movies I'm going to tell you, I will give you one to watch, which is my favorite.
All right.
And that is Murder by Death. Have you heard of that?
Murder by Death? Okay,
Yes.
wait, I'm writing this down.
Do you know that one, right, Mark?
Murder by Death. I think I remember you mentioning it on a previous episode.
Murder by Death it's old, but it's fantastic. It came out January 1st. Wow. January 1st? Who comes out with a movie January 1st? 1976. But it is by Neil Simon, and it has all these. I'll give you basically it's a comedy. It's a mystery comic film. And it's basically take the most famous detectives in the world, and they took the actual actors who plays these detectives back in the day, and then they put them in a house and they start killing them off. And then they have to figure out who's doing it. It's really funny.
I mean, you had me the moment you said mystery horror comedy.
Yeah, it's a mystery horror comedy.
It sounds okay. I'm gonna watch this.
It has Peter Falk. It has Alec Guinness. It has Truman Capote. It has David Niven, Peter Sellers, Maggie Smith. It's like a who's who of these are older mystery, but back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, mystery TV shows and films were very, very popular, and these were some of the most popular actors, and they literally got them all together and put them into this movie, and they're playing themselves, which is not themselves, but they're playing their characters, it is crazy funny. The other one I would recommend, which is much more recent, is Clue, which is really good. Clue is is also a mystery comedy. The one from 1985.
Also the first was there because I know one adaptation of Clue. I don't know if there's been another more recent one. I'm thinking about is it 80s?
Yes, 1985. And this also has an all-star cast. It has John Landis wrote it. It has Tim Curry, Christopher Lloyd, Madeline Kahn. It's a who's who. It's very good. When it came out, they had a gimmick where there was 3 different endings.
Yes.
and then you would go see it and you would get a different ending. There is actually only one true ending, and then when you watch it now, they'll show you all three endings. They show you they could have ended this way or this way, but this is the real ending, and then they have like the real ending.
Yes.
That movie is fantastic too. So there you go. There's two movies you can watch.
Well, there we go. I'm in.
Okay, horror is.
Yeah.
There's too many horror movies though. Like horror, you can do forever. Like horror, and you can never stop when it comes to horror. So,
weirdly, I don't actually watch a lot of horror movies, to be honest. I really don't. For how much I love horror, I mean, yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
we are going to talk a bit about mysteries. But once again, do check out Kickstarter or Backer Kit right now and get your Mimic, because it's almost there. We're almost there, and you can get your very own Mimic. Someone has to back, and we'll get it. But and then tomorrow, if you guys like Red Letter Media or Second Wind, Jack Packard is going to be on the show live tomorrow, and we can ask him questions. You can ask him questions. You can ask questions about Palinko. You can ask him questions about anyone from Red Letter Media. He'll happily answer those questions. So this should be funny. And he'll talk about his D&D campaign with Rich Evans. Rich Evans actually plays in D&D with Jack. So those of you who follow Red Letter will know exactly what I'm talking about. The rest of you have no idea what I'm talking about. Anyhow, Mark, do you want to kick off horror and settings and what you guys were talking about before this even started?
Talking about setting the mood via which game you play. So the way that our pre-conversation started, which led to some pretty good stuff, was Steven was saying horror is one of the hardest things you can possibly run in a tabletop role-playing game. And Val said it's not that hard. And I said it depends on what game you're running, because Steven is usually running the hardest possible game, or always running the hardest possible games for horror, D&D, and Pathfinder, which you can. There are long books that have been written about it, but it takes a lot of skill, a lot of technique, and there's some games that just make it easy. And that's how we got into it.
Also, I think it's not as much that it's like it's not that hard as much as it is like it's ones that like tend to come more naturally to me than, for example, like combat and like epic scenarios do. Like I'm really bad at that, but horror tends to come a little more naturally. But yeah, for sure, like system makes a huge difference. I think for me the biggest like wake up call was playing Call of Cthulhu for the first time. Just the thought that you can be so powerless was amazing. And it is true that like some of the games that like a lot of people have, I mean, most people have gotten started at least with D&D and D&D adjacent games, right? And in that case, you're so powerful, it's hard to let go of that. You always have a way out.
That makes sense, because D&D adjacent games are a power fantasy. It's about the fact that you may be powerless in real life, but now you're empowered to do things. And horror is usually like going in a different direction. It doesn't mean it's not, and you're right. Some people are just really skilled at it, even from the very first time, even in D&D. Like Linda, my wife, when she was first running her first campaign for like a full group, it was just a sewer encounter in a pre-published adventure for Pathfinder. And people online have been like, this is the most boring part of this adventure. You're just in the sewers. It doesn't even write all the things for you, and the GM has to come up with it. It's not great. And she somehow managed to freak out all the players, like more than I ever have, just because of her own innate skill. She said she was channeling her own nerves and anxiety about it being her first game. So her being nervous made other people nervous. My character like had a link with another creature that she had summoned that caused her to take like wounds that the other summoned creature that was kind of following us was taking. So sudden wounds would be appearing on my character for no reason, and we would encounter dead things that my summoned creature had killed that we didn't know. I knew how they had died, but we didn't. And we all just got so freaked out in this sewer, and it all like led to a climax where the freaked out gnome like saw a bunch of guards who were coming after us, and we knocked him out with a spell, and then he just like killed them. And we're like, you just killed the guards. He's like, I know, I'm just so freaked out. And if they find us, they might like, they were like kind of lawful evil, like throw you into prison forever, Hell Knight guards. And so like, we all got so freaked out by that one of the players who was having fun, but they were like, my character is so traumatized by that she's never going to adventure again. So I'm going to make a new character.
Wow.
But the player was like, this is great. I'm going to keep playing. I could tell my character was too freaked out. I don't think she's going to keep at this.
That is amazing. I love that. I've not yet achieved that. I've managed to make to make my players really like shiver and freaked out and be like, let's just like take a break. That was freaky. But I've not yet managed to get a player to retire their character from it. This is my new goal. You've given me a new goal.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, it is like it's when talking about system, I think it is definitely possible to bring horror in D&D. It's just I think you have to get a lot more creative with it. Some of the in a lot of other systems, like we were talking about Dread earlier, or in COC, like the odds are kind of stacked against you, right, from the beginning, and you're very aware of this, and being aware of it makes it so much easier to get into that vibe. But we don't really have that with D&D, so it doesn't mean it's not possible to have horror. It just means you have to get a bit creative with it. And I think what she did with you having these wounds appear on your body, that is super cool. I'm gonna steal that. Can I steal that? Can you ask?
Yeah, you can take it. You can take that.
How will she know if you stole it?
Only if you told me, and
know.
even then, Linda'd probably just be happy. Like, you know,
Awesome.
she writes creepy and adventures sometimes, and they're like, you know, thousands or however many people who've played them and stolen her stuff there. So she's just happy when more people are using it from one like I guess teacher to another. She had like had a degree in teaching, but then decided to go into games. And so yeah, go for it. I'll tell
Perfect.
Linda that you stole it. She'll think it's great.
So
I will come and report my findings.
Awesome.
So Val, what
Yeah.
do you run, and then how do you? I mean, so all your videos are very moody, like they're very
Yeah.
like, and you do a lot of mood. That's where I kind of came up with the idea, is that your videos have this very dark mood, and then even the font you use, it's like the whole thing just reeks. Your videos reek of mood, of setting.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's really nice. You have a very distinctive style as opposed to us. Ours reek of, I'd say, color. We have a lot of color in our videos and a lot of color in our books, but that's a choice. So ours is like bright and happy, and yours is dark and depressing and death, which is great, which is because you need everything. But like, what do you do in your games? Like when you play, is that the type of games you play at home? And do you actually like set the mood? Do you do them in person? And because I know people who do that a lot. Like I know people who do set games and then they play soundtracks and they turn down the lights and they have like old fashioned lighting, or like red lights or green lights to sort of make it hard to see. And do you do stuff like that, or is that just really for your videos? Like, what do you do?
Okay, first thing, I think the word that you used earlier before we got live was the word ominous. And I think it's very easy for me to make things ominous because I am ominous as a person. Yeah. I no longer really play in person super often, to be honest. Now my gaming group is abroad, and so we all just play online. When I was playing in person, I definitely was having fun with lighting, although definitely not to the extent that I tend to do in my videos, just because I didn't have that many colorful lights before. But if I had, I definitely would have. I've heard of people who use Alexa to cue things, and that sounds really cool. But I definitely like to have like some low light to some extent. Music, however, even now that I'm playing online, I have a really hard time going without music. And we always use music, usually on something like Watch Together, which now is even integrated on Discord. But having this soundtrack that everyone can kind of keep going with is really great. It is something that I advise a lot of people to delegate at first. Like, just introduce music, you can let one of your players handle it. It's something that I tell people, oh, you can let the players handle that, but it's cool to have music. But myself, I cannot manage to delegate music. I kind of can spend half of my prep time just looking up different music, trying to figure out what I'm playing. I have so many different playlists on YouTube that I just pull from whenever I'm going to run a game. But music and mood is definitely super important. That being said, it's not necessary. It really isn't.
Do you actually do music online when you're playing with a VTT?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we use Watch Together. It's like it's just like a website, and you can just queue your YouTube playlist on it that you've created, and then you'll send the link to the people you're playing with. They all can tune to it, and we all can hear it at the same time. It's all like, if you want to pause it pauses it for everyone. If you change the song, it changes it for everyone, so everyone is on sync to listen to it. And now it's like built in on Discord, apparently. Yeah.
So do you DM your games, or are you a player? It sounds like you DM a lot of your games.
I DM'd a lot. These days, I'm trying to get back to DMing. I had a long time where I didn't really DM. And that's really just, I relocated. I didn't really have like a gaming group anymore. And now I'm just like slowly hopping back on top of it. But it's been slow. I definitely used to DM a lot more than I do now. Now I'm mostly a player who occasionally aspires to run a couple of one-shots here and there. And yeah, I mostly play these days. I used to run more than I played a few years ago. Yeah.
And what are the systems that you run mostly?
I mostly have run some D&D, honestly.
Really?
It's been like the first game that I started. Yeah, it is. It really is. It's like the first game that I started, and now I'm very aware that it's not necessarily the most fit for the playing style that I have. But it is the game that I have DM'd the most. DM'd. I mean, DM'd. But I've also tried Dread. I've tried some more minimalist games like Honey Heist, or a bunch of like really small, like fun things like Goblin Quest, this kind of thing. We talked about Dread earlier, which I ran only twice, but both times it was a blast. It was great. I also have had fun with games like Alice is Missing. That is very unusual in terms of like what we're used to in TTRPG. I don't know if have you played that?
No, I know of it,
Alice
but I've
is
never
Missing.
played it.
Yeah. It's been really fun. And I know that not everyone is going to be really into this kind of games, but on my end, I look for emotional involvement in TTRPG more than anything. So it's definitely been super fun for me. I kind of cried a couple of times during Alice is Missing. So, I mean, any game that can do that is great.
I've had players cry before sometimes. That's one that I think is an important thing to think about when we talk about setting the mood. Is even how much do you want to set the mood?
Yeah.
Do you want to have a discussion with players in advance that like this could have heavy topics? Like, is it a good thing or a bad thing or a neutral thing if someone's crying
there's
at the table?
like a good cry and a bad cry. This was a good cry. This was a great cry. This was like so cathartic and amazing. It's like, oh, this is beautiful. It was like a cry of like, oh, I've just seen a really beautiful movie and the ending moved me, right? Like, this wasn't like I hate you and I never want to play with you again and this was terrible. This was not like that. But yeah, I mean, definitely having conversations about boundaries is super important. We do that. We do that like these days, like not in a very structured way, just because we always play with each other, so we've kind of like gotten used to each other's boundaries. It's an ongoing conversation though. Like we all feel comfortable to say when something is a bit too much, And we know each other well enough to say, well, we've done, 15, 20 session zeros together at this point, where we kind of already know each other's boundaries, but we all know we're comfortable bringing them up in case. Yeah, so it's when we're playing with someone else is joining us something, we would definitely make sure all of that is set up, because if you're playing in a game where you are looking for emotional involvement, and I do think that a lot of people are playing where the boundaries almost between themselves and their character and what they're experiencing sometimes not blurs, but it can be really immersive, right? It's in that case you want to make sure everyone feels comfortable with it, and especially if you're going to go towards horror. Yeah.
Yeah, horror is something you definitely want to have consent and understanding.
Yeah. So wait, I want to
absolutely.
I want to have a question more for both. I mean, I can pipe in too, but someone said that to run a horror RPG is to give players the feeling of helplessness, but I sort of disagree, because it's one of those catch-22s, because players hate when they feel like they're being railroaded, or they feel like they're helpless, or they feel like their actions don't impact the game at all. In fact, players they really hate that. So how do you draw the line between horror, where your players do feel sort of helpless, but not railroaded and forced into the situation, so that
there's an easy answer to that,
okay,
which is that you posited a question from chat, and then you made a statement without evidence that all players hate when there's elements of railroading or pushing them onto a path.
I hear it a lot. It's a very common.
A lot.
You do hear it a lot.
Yeah, it's very common,
especially with relation to D&D and D&D like RPGs. But the answer is that part of the answer, there's a lot of parts, is that some of the people who are out there playing horror RPGs are also among the players who are okay with that feeling of helplessness, or that feeling of this unknowable, powerful thing that's coming towards them that they might not be able to thwart. Whereas a sort of standard fantasy role-playing game is often a power fantasy, and be like, look, I'm powerless at work, I'm powerless, the world around me is changing. I just want to be in my fantasy game the powerful character who has real agency and can make their own decisions. That's what a lot of people are going for in a D&D game. So I think it's based on the mindset is part of the answer.
Well, what about, I mean, I used to play it a lot. I haven't played it in a long time, but I do like Call of Cthulhu. I do like sanity systems. I do like the board game Call of Cthulhu actually does I played that hundreds of times. It does a very good job of where your character starts off strong. And the way it works in Call of Cthulhu, you basically, in the board game, you have 4 attributes. You have mind and body, and 2 sub-attributes of mind and body. And if either of those go to 0, you die. And when you take damage, you often get to decide where you're taking your points off of, whether it's your body or your mind. And there's ways to raise it, but not a lot. There's, it's mostly going down during the game. So you feel like you are slowly marching towards the inevitable of death or craziness, which is where a lot of the dread comes from. It's that it's not that you have no control. In fact, you do have control. You can decide how you want your character to go insane or die. You get that control. You have limited control or a lot of control, but you still have that control, so it never feels like it's railroading. And more importantly, it's slow, and you feel the progression of you slowly going down that road, which I think works really well, as opposed to D&D and Pathfinder, where you just heal yourself. You got it's like you have 500 hit points and you get down to 499. You wait 5 minutes and you're back to normal. As opposed to these games where it's like, no, you're not. And it can take months, years, never for you to go back. And that your characters are permanently scarred and damaged. and people are okay with that because these are also shorter games. These are games that you play in a couple of hours and then you're done. It's not like you have a lot of attachment to these characters. But I don't know. What do you think of
my COC game has been going for 3 years.
Oh, really?
And, I mean, yeah. We're still slowly inching towards death/insanity/ complete corruption. And the dread is still very much alive. But yeah, no, yeah. It's I actually really enjoy that feeling of like powerlessness in games. But I would really say it's not synonymous with railroading because I also really hate being railroaded, and somehow I feel like the two can happen. I think there's so many different kinds of powerlessness, and these can happen in. Well, let me try to find my words. English is hard. I want to say, like, you can be powerless and not railroaded in that what's happening is just leading you to make decisions that are harder and harder, but you're still making decisions, right? It's just that you're not stuck between and harder, but you're still making decisions, right? A bad place and another bad place. And there are going to be consequences to whatever decision you're going to make, but there are going to be decisions that you have to make. And I think one of the biggest sources of horror is that feeling that once you've made that decision, you should be making that decision in a state of tension, right? Of like, oh, I have to decide, like, right now, this has to happen. And then once the decision has been made, that feeling that perhaps this was not the right decision, maybe you messed up, is also a great source of horror. So I do feel like as much as powerlessness can sometimes, you feel powerless in cases of railroading. It can happen, just like you can also be railroaded in ways that are more chill. It's also really possible to feel powerless without necessarily boxing your players into one path, right? It's really just about like, oh, well, you are powerless. You're going to have to make decisions that are going to be really tough, and you're going to have to live with the consequences of these decisions. And I think failing forward here is super important. Failing forward is something that I had never heard about when I started playing TTRPG. And then the moment I heard about it, it was like, that makes so much sense. Why is that not like a golden rule written somewhere of bad things can happen if you can mess up, but then that doesn't mean that it's the end. It just means that the plot is complicated by something, and it's one more challenge you're going to have to face. Yeah.
100%. And that's sort of the other half of it. Failing forward is so important. We talk about it in Pathfinder 2 when we wrote that. It is the linchpin of systems like Burning Wheel and some other ones where you have to fail forward every time. But the other half of it is absolutely that losing power does not mean there's only one path. Like, there's a difference between a railroad, which is a railroad would be something like there's only one way to go and it's a tiger. And if it's not horror, it'd be like you killed a tiger. Or another railroad is you can open one of these 3 doors. They supposedly all have different things, but whichever one you pick, it's really going to be a tiger and you kill the tiger. In a horror railroading game, it's whichever one you open, it's a tiger and it eats you. And in a non-horror railroading, in a horror not railroading game, there are 3 doors. Behind one of them is a tiger that eats you. One of them is
you become a tiger against your will.
Yes,
another
is like you into the tiger, and you eat your most beloved person. And the third one, your soul is stolen, and now you're walking around with no soul. And you know that those are the 3 options before opening the door. You have to pick which one you can live with. So that could be a good example of a hard non-railroaded option.
Powerlessness can also be, I think, the kind of powerlessness that I like most, especially with D&D, and it's because it's kind of like you can't be powerless through your abilities, right? Because you're these heroes who are like, I mean, at this point you're what, like level 15, you're a god, but it's the idea of that so much powerlessness can come from lack of knowledge, from not knowing all of the ins and outs of the decisions you're about to make. like, yeah, you could make that decision, but you can sense that there's something that's going to go wrong with reading that tome. It's definitely ominous. I mean, it sounds like an answer, but well, guess you're going to have to mess around and find out. I'm trying so hard to not swear.
Yeah,
you can
it's
swear.
definitely true though. The unknown is a massive part of horror, and one thing that makes D&D a little harder for it is that like magic is very knowable and quantifiable. In Pathfinder 2, it's like, yeah, it's gonna be magic missile, it's gonna do exactly what we think it's gonna do. Whereas in systems where magic is more like, well, I guess I'll cast it and find out, that can be a little bit more horror themed right away.
Yeah, I've seen like attempts to mitigate it though. Like I've seen I wrote a few scenarios for a D&D campaign setting that had like these labels on spells like corruption, etc., and like gave you mechanics for like whenever you use that spell or learn that spell, there's consequences to it. Because I mean, yeah, you shouldn't be able to like dominate someone, like make them like move against their will unless there's some consequences on your soul, you know. And it makes a lot of sense. That I've definitely seen attempts to make it happen, but it's true that there are systems where, I mean, spellcasting being vague and all of that is just, it makes it easier. Yeah.
So how would you differentiate horror versus mystery? Because isn't everything a mystery?
Everything is a mystery.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Everything is a mystery. I think I said earlier that it's not that I find horror easy. It's more that horror comes easier to me than epic does. I think that was a lie. What comes easiest to me is mystery. I can't write something unless it's a mystery for some reason. It has to have some mystery aspect. But horror is always partly mystery, right? Because unless it's like complete just like gore and body horror, most of horror is just going to be foreshadowing and just like showing signs of the monster, right?
Well,
yeah, I think that's a big part of it. If you know everything about it, it's not as scary anymore, even if it theoretically is something that's scary.
No, because isn't mystery just? I mean, every game I've ever played, it's always like, oh, okay, the mystery. You know, like you never know exactly what you're going for, and adventures are all discovery and adventure. Literally, doesn't adventure and a mystery kind of mean the same thing? You know what I'm saying? It's like
having mysteries in your setting is different than doing an entire mystery genre. Having them in your setting and your dungeons is so important that it's either the second or the third rule of dungeon craft from the old columns in Dungeon Magazine by Ray Winnegar back in the day. Like the first rule was don't create too much stuff that you don't actually need and spend a lot of time on that. But the second or third was whenever you create something new, create a mystery or secret. But there's a difference between that, which is having discovery and secrets, and being a mystery genre adventure or scenario, because that's where you go all in on it. That's where the discovery is the adventure rather than being a part of it, I think. So which do you...
I'm kind of curious. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, Val, which do you type of run? Or because it's like, it sounds like you like to run, well, you like to run both, but do you run horror adventures that have mystery? Or do you run mysteries that have horror?
I think, to be entirely honest, now I'm kind of thinking about it, because from what Mark said, I mean, there's mystery, yeah, and I think that I've been using mystery less as a genre and more as a structure, kind of. Yeah, I think I'm realizing more and more these days that maybe I'm incapable of writing an adventure that isn't a mystery. I think I just kind of like use like the reveal of knowledge kind of I don't want to say sparingly, because it's not sparingly. I want my players to figure out what's happening in the end, you know, but I tend to structure everything as a mystery where the flow of information is definitely like, it's not like, oh, here's the situation, you know what you have to do, you go and do it. This is, here's a weird situation, why is this happening, let's figure it out. And so it's kind of been the basis for everything that I've written, everything that I've run, really. So I'm not really sure how to answer that, to be honest. I don't think I run mystery as a genre. I think as just my basis structure for everything I do.
Hmm.
I
That
don't
makes
know.
sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like everyone has a sort of idiom that they use when they're running games that even if you change the genre, you might still have little pieces of it. Like there's an element, yeah. Like a mystery's got to be that for you. There's an element of mystery and foreshadowing that I kind of always include when I'm writing my own stuff, and I have usually a little bit of humor, even if it's horror. You know, you have the drunken porter scene in Macbeth, and other times that the comedy or humor can actually increase the overall horror because you allow it to lighten at one moment just before the big.
It's a game of contrast, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely a game of contrast. It's actually a game of, tension and release, I think, is what I always like to go for. Is the fact that like you can only know true fear when you've known the absence of fear. So you have to kind of like keep, giving it that roller coaster kind of feeling from time to time, and you have to lighten the mood. I think I remember once. I remember when I the first when I was starting to GM and I was going into Curses Strat. I remember posting once and asking for like help on something, like mentioning something about my players cracking a joke during game, and I was met with people saying, "You shouldn't be making jokes during Curses Strat. It's a horror campaign. You're not allowed to have jokes in it. Not allowed to have humor." And I really don't agree. I think you need to give some of this like lighter vibe in order to really feel the contrast of like when you're at the bottom of the pit,
Wow. Who actually said that? Because they're, I can guarantee you they're 100% wrong. They're not even 99% wrong. They're 100% wrong. That's actually a very, very well-known. That's very well known in script writing. Is that because laughter and horror are actually very close emotionally. So you kind of want to have them to also break tension to make people feel off balance. And in fact, the best example of this, and Mark's heard me say this a trillion times, that no one realizes, but Pixar does this better than anyone, the old Pixar movies, because every Pixar movie, which is very light, very friendly, very child happy, has horror in it. And like some of them have real horror, like in Finding Nemo, when you see Bruce the shark, like that's a pretty scary scene. And if you're a kid, it's terrifying. And it's to there's a lot of reasons why they do it, but it's really to reinforce the rest of the story. And by changing your emotional state, it actually forms permanent connections in your brain, so you actually remember the movie better. Like Toy Story does it. Like all their really classic movies, Monsters Inc. does it. Like they all do it. Every single the classic Pixar movies totally combine. They're not horror movies, but they all have horror elements.
But they have horror elements,
and it's on purpose. It's actually very strategically placed and done, even where they do it and when they do it, to reinforce the other emotions. And you do the opposite, is that if you have horror movies and then you throw in humor, it will relieve tension. So then the next horror scare will make you even more scared. Because if it's all tension all the time, then you can't. Jaws is a perfect example. That's like the original. That's like the best of all. That's probably one of the best horror suspense movies in history, and it has lots of humor in it. So, and it's humor from weird places, though. It's not them cracking jokes. It's humor from situational humor or from, just dry humor, but, it doesn't have to be humor. So, anyhow. Yeah, it just bothers me when people say stuff like that. They have no idea. They're totally wrong.
It's really just like giving you something to contrast the dark with. Because if everything is always dark, then you're not going to notice a sudden like change in lighting either, right? So it's. That was a really weird metaphor. That was not even a metaphor at all, but whatever. I'm going to run with it.
No, you're right. Like it's a major psychological effect. This is like a very non-serious application of this, but there are some like serious and chilling applications of like shell shock, or like countries that are constantly having like bombings or attacks, or like in the US school shootings. Eventually you become numb to them as they keep happening, whereas the first time it like can destroy you for like multiple days when you hear about it or when it happens. And eventually people are just like, oh yeah, that happened again, this is terrible, but like the emotion is gone. And it's the same sort of psychological principle that we flippantly and much less seriously than that are using here, in films or games or books, towards the idea that if you don't break it up and you're just constantly forcing them to be on the whole time, it'll just dull it out.
I mean, I feel like being a game master or like making movies or writing is really just kind of like observing human psychology a lot. It's really just like trying to figure out what makes people tick, like how they respond to things. I think for me that the favorite thing that I like using for horror is something that started out of one of my big flaws in horror, actually, is the thought that when you picture like a really scary monster, creature, etc., like you're expecting to roleplay it with this like deep voice, etc. I don't have that, obviously. I mean, if I tried to make a deep, scary voice, I would just make myself completely ridiculous. But it does mean that I can play around a lot with the unsettling. And my favorite thing to do is just making these creatures or NPCs or situations that just like have me use a little like creepy doll voice. And that's absolutely great. I think, and I think my favorite kind of horror is leaning into the unsettling, the idea of taking something that is very familiar, that is very comforting. And I think my favorite kind of horror is twisting it. And everything that, and I think it works well in my case, just because, I mean, I'm not the most intimidating person, let's be honest. I wish I were, but in this flesh suit I've been trapped in, sadly, I can only show a fraction of my true power. But the idea of like taking something that isn't intimidating, something that is comforting, or something that is just, non-threatening, and just suddenly twisting it and making it completely unsettling is playing on that exact contrast, and on also the thoughts that removing the familiar tends to be what freaks out people the most. Yeah, just removing the footholds completely.
I'll tell you, if you want to freak out people and you're playing music, this one of the scariest things I've ever seen, and this actually has been used to great effect, is if you play cartoon music or Looney Tunes music during horror. It is absolutely really unsettling. Like,
yeah.
The Twilight Zone
the same
movie
way that like
that.
Music boxes and stuff. I mean,
right.
at this point, I feel like music boxes have been used so much that we almost associate them to horror right away. But I feel like the reason why we started using music boxes was because of that, because it was in the realm of childhood and cute things and comfort. And cartoon music is the very same like idea. Yeah. Just that it hasn't been overdone like
it hasn't definitely. Well, the very first time I saw it, it's not a great movie. But there is it's Twilight Zone, the movie. If you ever saw it, it's Twilight Zone. The movie has 4 stories, I think. It's like 4 small stories. And like one's a happy story, one's a goofy story, but like I think the third one is a horror story. And it is pretty creepy. And it's basically
I'm adding that to my list.
That one you should put down. It's about it's hard to explain without giving it away, but long story short is these people live in a house that's controlled by a kid, and he makes the house like a cartoon, but it's horror. So you have like real horror going around with cartoons and cartoon sounds. So it's like really messed up. You're like, ew. And also because it's old, it has practical effects, so no CGI. And that always messes me up too. It's like when you see these horribly creepy things, you're like, wow, that's really there. Like that's like that's not a CGI puppet. That's like an actual creepy doll that they're interacting with, which in my own brain always messed me up a little too. But that one's done really well. The music's done really well. And man, if you have not seen Creep Show, have you ever seen Creep Show?
I have now.
Oh, that is an A++.
You're giving me so many recommendations
Creep
tonight.
Show's
I'm going to watch all of these now.
Creep Show is an A++. And Creep Show is based off these. So back in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, they used to have these comic books, and the comic books were horror, like real horror. And this is basically taking those comics and turning them into a movie, and it actually looks like a comic. It even like does stills and frames and stuff of comics. So that's what Creepshow's about. But it's an anthology, and I think it has 5 stories, and they're all pretty good. I mean, some are better than others. Man, I gave you tons of anthologies. Cat's Eye, that's another good one. That's a Stephen King anthology. And there's a cat that sort of connects them all, and that one's really good. The last, it's pretty funny. I find the methods of these movies more interesting almost than the movies themselves. In one of the stories, it's a cat versus this little creature. It's like a little gremlin, and they didn't have CGI, so to make the gremlin look small, they built the set. So like everything was enormous. So there's like a bed, and the bed is
reverse kaiju movie filming.
Yeah, the bed is like 10 feet tall, and the chair is like 12 feet tall.
Oh, wow!
And it actually has it's a world's record for the world's largest set, and you can see stills of it. It's really weird because he's really tiny, and that's the only way they could make it look like he was running around because they didn't have the technology. So, but anyhow, these are. Because of that, and because of the weirdness of the actual, I feel like today's movies, because CGI doesn't make anything feel scary. It just doesn't, because it's like, it doesn't feel real, as opposed to these movies where you'll see things and you're like, that's really there. That's really happening.
I agree, but for the opposite reason.
Really? What's your reason?
I agree that like CGI kind of makes everything feel less scary, but not because it is not real, rather because it is too real. It seems so, I think because they just want to show it, you know? Like they want to show it so much that if you have CGI, it's because you're seeing the monster. And to me, it's kind of like the moment I've seen it, it's no longer scary as much as when I'm not yet seeing it. It's like when I'm still seeing only like shadows of it, which is something that you would do in older movies before CGI. I've been like, well, we can't really show the monster, so whenever we're going to show it, it's going to either move so fast that you can't see the imperfections of the actual like puppet or costume, or you're going to show it through shadows, and therefore like it's same, the imperfections aren't shown. And I think, in that case, CGI is kind of like, if you see it CGI, it's because it wants to be shown.
You're 100% right. And in fact, have you seen Jaws?
I have.
Okay, good. Because, that's the whole thing about Jaws, is that the shark looks so fake that they had to literally not show it, because, and that's what made it so terrifying, is that everyone didn't no idea what, and everyone's brain is much better at forming horror than what you'll see. And you know who also does that very well is Quentin Tarantino. So Quentin Tarantino, in his movies, he does a lot of horror, but he doesn't always show it. In fact, Reservoir Dogs, if you want to see, that's really horrible.
I've seen it, it was so long ago.
Right.
I didn't remember it.
Well, that's the scene where basically there's a part where he cuts off a guy's ear, and they don't show it. They just show him with the knife, and he's dancing with the knife, and it's just so creepy. And then they pan away, and you just hear screaming, and then he pans back, and I couldn't even watch it. Like, I can't even watch that because it is so creepy, and yet nothing happens. It's literally
in that case, I have another suggestion for you.
Okay.
This time I'm the one giving you a suggestion. So I don't remember that scene from Reservoir Dogs. It's been too long. However, I do have that same thought of like, if there's going to be a torture scene or this very like gory, like body horror scene, the idea of not seeing it and it still being terrifying is so cool. And I think the best way I've seen that being done was in a UK TV show that only ran 12 episodes, and it's called Utopia. And in the very first episode, they have a torture scene involving eyes where you don't actually see anything. They cut the camera and it's absolutely terrifying, even though you see nothing. You know, it's just like the mastery of the tension in it and like showing you.
I know
only
what you're
showing you the in-betweens is amazing.
So by the way, someone said, because people are like, why do you guys talk about movies so much on this? The reason I talk, no, we do, and I'll tell you why. Because there's a reason, and I've mentioned this before. The movie industry and the script writing industry has figured out, basically through words and through scripts and through descriptions, even more so than books in many ways, of how to tell a story, how to tell it quickly and effectively using just descriptions. And I feel that personally, that if you study script writing or if you study how movies are made and script structure, that you can learn a lot, and I mean a lot, of how to become not even a good GM, but not even a great, but a fantastic GM, because people have been watching movies for so long that they're already trained and they know these tropes. Whether you want to admit it or not, let's say they've never seen movies, they know what to expect and they know how these tropes work. And you can use that to your advantage when you're telling stories. And that's why I like to bring up movies, because people can think, how am I supposed to tell it? How am I supposed to tell the story? I'm like, well, how did this movie tell it? And was it effective? And if the answer is yes, then it's like, then steal it. Like, take it, put it in your game, use the same method, and you'll be amazed at the results. You really will. You'll be like, wow, that really worked.
As the guy on this show who often does not know the movies that Steven is talking about, I like to rate the movie digressions on a scale. And I'm going to say, of all of them that we've ever done, being in a setting the mood episode where Val also studied film is one of, and where all the movies we're talking about are related directly to the topic and are tied in as we go. These are completely the most apropos movie things we're doing. They're hardly even digressions.
No digressions.
I'm going to contrast to when we're talking about something completely different, and then Steven talks about some 80s movies for 20 minutes that are not even remotely related.
That's the end of the stream when we do that.
Remotely related to the stream. That is on the other side of the scale, and there's a sliding scale that's not just one or the other. But these are completely fitting because, like, I've taken playwriting classes, movie and script design, game design for adventures. All of these things are tied together into the human experience and psychology, and there's many things you can learn from one and apply to the other. Yeah,
and that's why I'm bringing these up.
Yeah, I think for sure, like, movies are, I think actually for horror, I think the best possible inspiration for horror in terms of TTRPG would be Room 1408 for the pacing of it. This like kind of like up and down of like tension. Really. However, just in movies in general, I think if we're talking about GMing and kind of just like manipulating horror and mood and tone, I think in that case, yeah, I mean, it's if we're talking about it as a kind of the whole process of trying to figure out how human psychology works and what makes people feel certain things and how you can use this in your game, then I mean, movie makers have been trying to do that forever, right? If I want to look at how to create something unsettling, I'm just going to look at Eraserhead. I mean, it's going to be great, and it's also this thought of not just for movies, but also movies, TV shows, books, anything, any reference to media, and specifically to tropes. Even tropes are cliche at this point because they've been so overused in movies and everything. I still think we should absolutely use the cliches and use the tropes in TTRPG, because if you think about it, we are trying to tell a story entirely in a theater of mind way sometimes, where you've no way of showing anything, and you have to come up with a way to communicate information quickly, because you're not in a book where you can just talk long descriptions forever, and you're not in a movie where the screen can show you these visuals. You have to find a way to accurately show and communicate this information, and the way you do that is through a collective language of tropes that we all have, right? And to me, TTRPG is like a lot of my TTRPG research really just is like researching tropes and how these work, because I mean, you can try and it will be a lot faster to try and to just say gentle giant rather than trying like describe the character to communicate the idea gentle giant, right?
Yeah. And that's why I use movies, just because most people have seen movies. It's only a 2-hour commitment. I can use TV shows. I can use books. There's not as many people who have read the same books. Not as many people seen the same TV shows. So movies is usually what we default to. But in our games, are all my games are public. You can see them on this channel. And if you watch me GM, many times I will do exactly what you just said. It's like, I will say, oh, it's like the scene from Alien. They're like, everyone will be like, oh, okay. And they know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, you're using it as shorthand. Right. And
it is a language that it can be used as a language at the table, and I think we absolutely should use it as that, because it makes communication so much more efficient. It cuts down on description time. And it makes people get the vibe immediately. It's great. It's great. Yeah.
Well, finally someone came on here and defended the movies. I'm so happy.
Look, I defended it here too.
I know.
For this use case, they absolutely are apropos.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Actually, I'm curious if there's any out there that the viewers like, that they use as inspiration. And these are all movies that I'm talking about that, trust me, there's a lot of bad ones. And I'm not mentioning the bad ones. I'm mentioning the good ones, the ones that I'm stolen from, and the ones that I use when I'm running games. And there's something else about when I'm running games, is that it's hard to do horror in Pathfinder and in D&D, especially D&D, because D&D is such a power fantasy. So when you did Curse of Strahd, did you DM it or did you play it, Val?
I ran it.
You ran it. So how did you make it scary? Like, how did you make Curse of Strahd? Like, was it scary? Was it supposed to be scary? Was it a little goofy and silly? Was it like how did you do, or what did you do when you ran it?
A bit of both, honestly. I mean, we have moments of goofy and funny, because again, we need to have that balance and that contrast, right? Because it's only when you have these moments of goofy that you can really feel the dissonance of the creepy. And so we have like bits of both. It's for I do also run Strahd in a very different way than I think most people do. Is I actually run a female Strahd for the exact same reason that I mentioned earlier, is that I felt like I would just like kill the mood and tone of it if I were to try and role play a very deep voiced male character, when I feel like I could make a very scary matron figure Strahd. Where, you know, I went for an idea of like mother knows best, and using these tropes again, because tropes are great. Of my Strahd is absolutely based on the Snow Witch from Narnia. That's my Strahd. So I think on my end it was first that, playing on my strength rather than my weaknesses. Well, not that it's a weakness to not be able to do a deep voice, but I mean, I'd like to pretend to be Batman sometimes. But using that, and the second thing I think is understanding the thought that horror is going to mean something completely different to different people, and each of your players is going to require a different type of horror. There's so many different types of horror, where there's some players who are going to be not super like freaked out by anything body horror or stuff like that, or anything gory. However, they will be really enthralled and freaked out by tropes of corruption, for example. So in that case, you have this one player who you play around with storylines of the dread powers and just slowly transforming them and like attacking directly their soul, you know. And meanwhile, you have another player who's maybe more about the horror of like a horror that's like more of a tragic kind of horror, which I think is really what gothic horror is, right? Like gothic horror is less horror than it is tragedy. And in that case, then you're going to play with this character along these tropes with lost memories of people. In that case, I have one player like that, one player whose character has forgotten people he cares about and is being reminded of it in some way. So it's really just trying to think of a variety of ways that people experience horror, and how for each of your players or each of their characters, but likely it's going to be the player through the character, you're going to find what makes them tick. Again, while considering that you want to make sure it's all within boundaries and making sure everyone is going to have fun and not be actually like, you know, anxious at the table. But
another way you can do horror in even a D&D type game or a Pathfinder pretty easily, I feel, is that if you have the characters themselves playing something kind of traditionally horror related. So in one of my games, we had this character, it was Starfinder, and Starfinder is science fiction, but there is you can play undead. You could actually play an undead character if you wanted to be. And you can be, you know, zombie. There's any type of undead. There's a whole bunch. There's actually a world of undead, and you can be an undead. So what happened is a character in the game, he actually died, like really early in the game. Like, I'm talking like level 2 or something. And he died, but then he was reanimated and brought back, but no one knew it. And even the character didn't know it. And then I told him later, I'm like, you're kind of a zombie, but you're undead. And he was cool with it. He's like, cool. But you could also, because it's science fiction fantasy, you can buy for very cheap. It was like almost nothing. You can buy a disguise kit to pretty much perfectly disguise you. So he looked totally normal. But then as he leveled up, he very slowly was decaying and looking a little bit more disgusting.
Oh,
and
that is lovely.
Well, no one knew what was going on. And so he was just like creeping everyone out over time. And then eventually they went to the undead world. And it was Amanda Hammond who actually wrote that adventure. She works for Wizards of the Coast now. She used to work for Paizo. She came on as a guest. And she played an undead shopkeeper and said, "Oh, how long have you been undead?" Because he could smell that you're undead, and like gave it up. And then the entire party's like, "I knew it! I knew there was something fishy about you all along." And they were like always uneasy around him. And then they all like yelled at him, and he totally denied it. He's like, "I'm not undead, I'm dead." So for the rest of the campaign, they all didn't know what, they were just always uneasy around him. And it just made everyone just freaky. You know, they were always freaked out around him because he was doing weird stuff. And then he was outed as being undead, which he denied. But then once in a while, something would happen, and then they'd see him as an undead creature, and they'd be like, "What was that?" And it's like, "Oh, ignore that. I'm totally fine." But my point of that is that if you play something like a vampire or a mummy or skeleton, just by being something that is related to horror, you can just make everyone uncomfortable just in regular day-to-day play. Just by being.
Yeah, I think my favorite part is also like by becoming more than by being, right? Like by becoming, I think I appreciate even more, because then you have like, I think in that case, I'm imagining if if that character that you're talking about had, before they knew they were becoming a zombie, etc., like the first signs of their body decaying. You know, like I keep thinking of oh god, I'm going to say another movie. Imagine this bathroom scene from The Fly.
Oh, the fly.
Right?
Yeah, the remake. Oof.
Seeing these transformations on your body is also incredibly like it's a very effective kind of horror for some people. It's definitely very effective on me. It definitely freaks
Body
me out. I
horror.
love
Yeah, body
seeing
horror.
it as a theme, not body horror in the sense of just gore, body horror in the context of like transformation or mutation. I
Mutation.
think.
Yeah, mutation.
Mutation for sure, because just gory, but mutation is a really interesting theme to me. So yeah, I mean, being one of these creatures among the party makes everyone uneasy, but for the player themselves, becoming this kind of creature can also be a really cool like horror trope and path to play with at the same time, which is really cool. Yeah, I love that.
There's nothing wrong with bringing up the fly. But I actually
I mean, it had to happen.
Oh, well, yeah. I actually do like... there actually is in Pathfinder... That's my favorite is... what's that called? Flesh warping. I love flesh warping. If you haven't seen Pathfinder 2nd edition, there's a whole subgenre where you can warp your flesh and get powers.
There's an ancestry for it, basically, like race or species of being flesh warped.
And it is nasty.
I need that. I need to play that.
I've said that before. People are like, what's your favorite? I'm like, flesh warped. And just saying that, half of my players are like, ew. Like, ugh. They're just disgusted even by the concept. And the art in the books is pretty... it's pretty vile too, actually. It's a little out there.
Here, I'm gonna put one of the character pieces in the chat that we're in with Val for one of the PC flesh warps.
I want to see it.
It's not like that outrageous compared to some of the other flesh warps. Let's see.
Why is it not letting me zoom in?
I don't know. Maybe
but
that's really a small piece of art. But whereas some of the monstrous ones look more like this,
like a flesh golem.
I'm putting it also into the chat with us.
Yeah, put it in chat. Put it in chat so people can see it.
Oh, I want to play.
I don't think I can put them into the video chat, Steven. I don't know how to add a picture to that.
No, the link. Just the link.
Can I? Oh, you can put the links. Okay.
This is a Google image search.
Oh, okay. I'll put some. I'll put some here. I'll put some. There's some flesh warps.
But I love this. Not so long ago, I played a one shot where I was like, you know what? I'm going to play as a reborn, and I'm going to play some dude who was just like a pile of flesh in a flesh golem factory, and he just became a person. So now he's just like an awakened flesh golem. I should have played that instead.
Yeah, flesh warp is... What is a flesh warp exactly, Mark?
Okay, so also it looks like Taryn is here and was like, "Hey, it's Val," in the chat. But so a flesh warp in the Pathfinder setting is a creature that either through some kind of weird magical accident or on purpose, because like Drow, the Dark Elves, which are no longer in the newest Pathfinder books but used to be in there, love to do this, is that they would experiment on people and transform them into some kind of either an amalgamation by like appending body parts onto them, or aberration of like causing them to devolve into like a mass of organs. And so that's the process of flesh warping. Some people do something where they just like replace their arm with like a weird crab arm that's powerful as like an enhancement flesh warping. So there's a variety of ways that flesh warping works in the Pathfinder setting, and depending on how it goes, it can shape your character or the creatures you fight. So that's kind of what it is.
I need to try that. I feel like that has been the soulmate that I was looking for this whole time.
Well, I got another one, and yes. Mark wrote this, and this works for both Pathfinder and 5e. Tell Val about the aberrant soul, Mark.
Okay, so the aberrant soul archetype, which is also some feats in 5e, or aberrant. I mean, I don't know how that adjective is pronounced.
Aberrant mind, I think, in 5e. Is that what it's called? I don't know.
There may be something similar to that in some other 5e book, but we have it in Battle Zoo Bestiary Strange and Unusual, which is a book of the weirdest, strangest creatures that are out there. It's for 5e D&D or for Pathfinder 2nd edition. And so those those creatures in the back, we have some player abilities, and the aberrant soul is basically just like, for some reason, something aberrant is within you, and the more that you take these feats, the more that you're giving up your humanity, and you get like this, your arm turns into a tentacle, and you can attack with reach and some other things, but it's a temptation because you might never be able to return from that. And we have like an essay that's written in character in the book about the iconic character who's shown in the art, and like his experiences and what it means to be an aberrant soul.
Oh, he's right there. He's on the back.
Yeah, he's on the back.
Oh,
He's absolutely
it
on the
feels
back.
like you wrote this for me. Did you write this for me? It feels like
We
you
may
wrote
have
this for
done.
me.
We might have.
We may have accidentally written it for you.
Well, but yeah, so like there, yeah, his arm is literally a tentacle, and he's sort of it's a little different than flesh warping because you're taking parts of monsters and like imbuing them into your body. So you're becoming a part of a monster.
I mean, actually, so not exactly.
Not
That's
exactly.
a different. That's the vestige hunter who's taking parts of monsters and
Oh,
imbuing
you're
them
right.
into their items.
Sorry, I forgot about the
aberrant
vestige
soul
hunter.
is just is accepting
We got that one too.
accepting these aberration things into their soul. It's a different situation. It's described in the book as you might have made a choice, accepted something alien within you in exchange for the power you would gain, or decided to further your experiments by testing them on yourself. Perhaps it started as an accident after contact with an aberration, a strange idol, or a tome of corrupted lore. Maybe it's always been lurking somewhere inside you, ready to surface at the right moment. Whatever the case, your mind, body, soul, and life force have become corrupted by aberrant energy, slowly transforming you into an aberration through and through. The only way to avoid the slow descent into a completely alien monstrosity is to avoid progressing in the power you gained from being an aberrant soul. But can you resist that temptation?
Yes, and there's two more we have, which we wrote. This is the Monster Mage, and that is that's Zara, and she uses monster parts to basically takes monsters and makes magic from them. And she can sort
Like
of
a blue mage in Final
yeah,
Fantasy.
it's like a blue mage in Final Fantasy. So she literally
I don't know Final Fantasy.
I don't think
Okay,
you might
fair
know.
enough. It's just like instead of getting the magic spells from reading it in your own book or like a patron or something like that, they learn the
You
spells
take it
of
from like something
monsters.
organic.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you use
Yeah,
organic.
when they're like, oh, this monster had fireball and I beat it, so I'm gonna like take its claw as a token. Now I can cast fireball.
And then this one you'll like, the Vestige Hunter. It's like, so this was our first product, so it's like I haven't thought of it in a while.
That's the one that takes the parts from monsters.
Yeah.
Like I beat a dragon, now my shield can like
he
shoot out
literally
a fire breath.
He took the head of a dragon, put it on his shield, and made it work, so now it breathes out fire. And then he took the wings, and now he can fly. So you can literally take parts from monsters and graft them onto your body.
I love
Apparently,
that.
Taryn is going to buy you a Final Fantasy game tonight.
Yeah, Final Fantasy. Taryn, buy the
I don't-
remake.
It's
I don't have a
FF7, which is
problem
one of
with
my
listening to
less
anything.
favorite Final Fantasies.
Do Final Fantasy remake. Do the remake. The remake's really good, and the second version's coming out like any day now. The second part. The
The
original-
remake I've heard is good.
The remake's it's totally different, and it's like it's totally redone. You know what? I never finished Final Fantasy VII either. I found it really.
I finished it. I did everything. I liked it because I liked all the
it's
Final Fantasies.
boring.
It was just one of my less favorite out of the
It was
series.
very rote. It kept repeating itself. But anyhow, maybe we do like hard. Well, I like, and there's a reason why all three of our monsters, all three of our characters have monsters parts in them. Is that I like the concept of using monsters in the actual world in different ways, and it's no different than like in Japan or ancient Asian societies that like they used every part of a fish. Like all these societies in Asia, like they'll use every part of an animal when they slaughtered an animal. They didn't just use it for food. Everything was used. Like they didn't spare a piece because they couldn't. They figured out a way to use every aspect of it. And I always find it weird in these games where you're just slaughtering these monsters and you're like, okay, let's just keep going. It's like, let's leave the dragon there. Someone will take care of it. I'm like, really? There's got to be so much good stuff on that dragon that you can
Steven,
use.
the ants gotta eat.
The ants.
The ants gotta eat so they can mutate and then you can fight them.
That's true. That is true. But the point is that I like to think of the ecology And that's something else. When I do horror, that's about, well, mystery. See, mystery I find more difficult because mystery you have to make sure it makes sense, because if it doesn't, you'll get called out immediately, and otherwise you'll be seen as a cheat. But I think horror, same thing, is that in my horror, I mean, I guess there's two types. There's like, horror that makes sense, and then there's like supernatural horror, which is anything goes. Like the Cthulhuoid, like you can't even understand what's happening. It's like things man was not meant to know type thing, where
it's mystery without answers.
Mystery without answers, right? But I feel like that you got to be very careful with as well. So
yeah, mystery is definitely like one of those. It's a genre for the over prepper kind of GM. That's me. I'm an over prepper, so it works for me.
Mark, what's your favorite Final Fantasy? Yeah, we're finally a little off topic.
Favorite Final Fantasy.
A little off topic.
Like, due to nostalgia, is probably 6. It also is just flat out a very good Final Fantasy, even if I try to take my nostalgia filters off.
I think a lot of people, like, actually 6 is very popular with a lot of people. But, so, what are you running now, Val? Are you running specific games right now, or?
I'm on hiatus for another campaign of Curse's Strahd.
Oh, really? Are you running it, or?
Yeah, it's a long hiatus though. I've been writing, I think, more than I've been running the past few months. So yeah, but we're playing Curse's Strahd again. I never got to finish that campaign because moving, not being around the gaming group anymore. So I started running that again. We're on a very long hiatus. I need to get back to it. But yeah, another attempt of running Strahd. I do want to get into I am right now prepping for running some Bassin. Which that game it's really tempting me. It really tempting me.
It feels like it's really, really your style.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm really more used to running D&D, but I feel like I would really find the proper system for my playstyle in Call of Cthulhu or in Bassin. It feels like it to me, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, I have Bassin. I haven't really read it though.
Yeah, I have it too. I need to give it more of a deep dive at some point.
Problem is I have all these games, but no one ever wants to play them. I'm always stuck playing the same freaking games.
Well, Steven, I've offered to play or run, and any time that you name one on this show, like, we should do it, I'll be like, I'll run it on this show if you want. And then we don't.
I will.
Right?
Take
like,
time
we talked
away,
about that
because it's going to take time away from actual work.
Yeah.
Because
that's
the true horror of real life. It's how little time we have to play games.
Well, I got a lot of time to play games. I don't have anyone to play them with. Actually, it's the other way around for me. I'm always looking for groups. It's where I live. It's funny. No one plays the games. I used to play a lot when I was younger, but then everyone, I guess. Well, we always talk about it. We're sitting in the retirement home playing games. So
yeah.
But
there will be a really, really awesome generation of retired people in the retirement home just playing the most.
Well, you're so young. You have a long way to go. But I'm getting up there.
I'm young, but
you're an old soul.
A grandma.
You're an old soul.
Yeah. I wouldn't say an old soul. I would say on Friday nights I stay home and knit while just watching some YouTube videos or something. Actually, no, that's a lie. I don't even have time to do that anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, whenever it's some kind of event, like on New Year's, Linda and I will be doing a subdued thing with family, and then Linda's grandmother, who is way older than Steven, is just out there at her third party of the night, and it's just some people really, really, it doesn't matter how old they are, they just are going to keep doing it.
To give you an idea, this year for New Year's Eve, I went to a party, but I left at midnight to come back home, and I actually came back on like on the call with Baron after, because with time difference for me was after the party, right? But I was leaving the party at like midnight. I was like, I'm not gonna leave too late. I really want to chill, really want to rest, you know. And my parents the next day told me, oh, we got trashed. We went to sleep at like 6, 7 a.m. It's like, you're over 60. You're younger than me.
Well, that's what happens. Because you're like, you'd rather do your own thing. And then you'll get old, and then you're like, uh-oh, gotta start partying.
Oops, time to catch up.
Time to catch up. I don't know, yeah, we talked about that. It's funny, because we always talked about, when we have all the free time. And yet, I think I'm going to be just making books. This is now my new thing, Mark. It's like every minute I have, I'm like, I'll play a game, and I'm like, I'd rather go lay out Eldamon a little bit more, and I'd rather do the Eldamon layout. Well, that one's so close. Those of you who are curious, that one's pretty much, it's more or less ready to go. I'm just waiting. I just need some artwork and some lore and some charts, and that's like 99% done. The Pathfinder version, it's like 99%.
Will they have teeth?
What's
No,
that?
some of the Eldamon do.
Oh, so
they're like
Eldamon.
elemental monsters from 13 different elements. Some of them do. I think like does Grim Malachim, the evolved form of the cat, have some pretty big teeth? I'm trying to remember which ones have.
There's a lot. That one has
have
teeth.
pointy teeth. There's some. The shark definitely, obviously, has a lot of teeth.
The Tyrannosaurus Rex's teeth. With its
the T-Rex though is like a kind of like a
what's a
stubby
psychic?
Arms, uses telekinesis.
It's a
T-Rex.
psychic.
So
T-Rex. So
it's the T-Rex that pretends to be psychic, but is actually using force powers,
yes,
and it literally
psychic.
has an ability that it tries to make you think it's using mind elements, and it tries to hang with the cool kids who are mind Eldamon, and like it even has its coloration is like a mind Eldamon, but it's actually the force element entirely. And it's like, no, I did it with my mind.
I was wondering why its color was wrong.
That is like the best description ever. You're making this T-Rex just sound like a very sad person.
Well, we have
but like
it is
in the best way.
Well, Eldamon is our we basically took Pokemon and put it into Pathfinder and D&D. And it's very complex. And we have how much? 100 and I don't know, 100 how many Eldamon? 163?
162.
It's 162. I was off by one.
That's a lot. All right, here's the actual description of Cyrano. So Cyrano says, this exceptionally rare Eldamon is sometimes misclassified by Eldamon researchers, even other Eldamon, not least of which because Cyranos themselves seek to actively mislead others as to their true identity, disguising their coloration, putting on airs, and obscuring their meaning with complex vocabulary. Despite being Eldamon of force who use their powerful aether to move objects, Cyranos deeply respect mind Eldamon, and they try to convince others they are from the mind element instead. Their little secret doesn't stop Cyraxes from forming close bonds of friendship with especially great conversationalists they meet.
All right, I sent you a picture of what they look like. Wow. You want to see in Discord. I sent you a picture of them.
So cute.
Well, there's the pet form, the battle form, and then the evolved form. So you can see them.
I want a plushie of it.
I have plushies.
Oh, well, Steven has some plushies behind him, although not of the T-Rex
Really?
or of Eldamon.
I have plushies.
There's Squirrelash, the fire squirrel.
This is what we do. We're crazy.
I love the illustration of the hens coming forward because the T-Rex has such short arms and it has these like hens projected. That's
why it made the giant hands. That's one of its special abilities that it has, is that it has these giant hands and it uses those so it can use its intelligence instead of its strength to like lift some things up with those hands.
I love it.
Indestructible Boy, when you see Eldamon, you because he's like, it's an S tier magic system, D tier video game. Well, it's not a video game, so you don't have to worry about that. But when you see this, it is ridiculous. There's no, I don't have.
You can tell Indestructible Boy has insight as a game designer because he's thinking about the fact that the move set in Pokemon is its own magic system and it could be used in other ways. That is also another thing that is true for Eldamon. Like, if you're going to create that many powers that can be used by the Eldamon, they shouldn't be the only ones who use it. So we also put an elemental avatar class in there for people with an Eldamon inside you, where you were shooting out the fire or using the ice powers or the mind powers or whatever, because it's the same insight Indestructible Boy showed on the stream, is that if you're going to have a high tier magic system that is you implement and you're going to spend that many pages on it, why not let other people play around with it?
So this is weird because you're doing an Ask Me Anything, Mark, right now.
I am doing 2 Ask Me Anything. It's sort of one because the Reddit that has the AMA also has a Discord, and they were like, well, we'll also do it on the Discord.
Oh my god!
So I'm on the Discord and the Reddit answering questions and in the stream. I'm everywhere. Someone in chat said the real horror is Mark's overworking.
Well, I'm also
How
we're
do
taking
you
turns.
multitask so much?
Well, we're taking turns because I'm running the backer kit and answering questions and running.
Yeah, I
stream.
barely answered a question to backer kit, although I did push an update during the stream.
Oh, good.
Also, while doing both Reddits and being in the stream.
Oh, I missed that.
How do you do that? What is your secret? What have you sacrificed to what deity in order to claim such incredible multitasking skills?
You, both of us, we can We're actually we're at a level that's kind of frightening at our levels.
It's my superpower, and I don't really know. Like, really, a lot of people are like, Mark, you could do this or you can do that. Really? And they think I have like a lot of different weird skills. I really just have one skill, which is the ability to do things very quickly. So I can multitask by doing things really quickly. Or they're like, oh, you did really well on all of these tests in school. It's like, because I can do things really quickly, I have more time than I would otherwise have. So like the ability to do mental tasks quickly makes it seem like you could do a lot of other things when really
You're just switching really fast.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Actually,
multi-threading.
I never thought of that. That does explain a lot. Between the fact that I really
just have one superpower and then I make it look like I have others.
Oh, that actually does make more sense now. Because if you don't sleep,
it's a great power though.
And then you, because I don't sleep that much, and I work very fast, just like you. So it seems like we're doing even more. So there you go.
Right.
You combine it. Oh. No, it's true.
So what you're saying is the secret to being that fast is to not sleep.
That's part of it.
That's part of it.
Okay. I will try that. I will let you know how it goes after about 2 weeks without rest.
Okay. No, I sleep.
I try to get enough sleep. Steven's a little different. Like, Steven just never stops. And so they worked out to the same thing, which is that Steven's pretty fast. He definitely is fast, and he never stops. Like he said, he's always like, oh, I could just do more work instead of playing this game. I am even faster than that, but I do stop sometimes. And that makes us work almost exactly the same, because when you multiply it out, it comes out to about the same amount.
Yeah, I don't work. Well, just because it depends. It depends. Well, because to me, like, doing layouts is fun. So, and it's also, when you're doing a 300-page layout, it's like playing a video game that's like 50 hours, because until you finish it, it's not over. So you're in the middle of it and you're like hour 42 and there's still like 8 more hours to go. So it's like, okay, I can either play this video game or I can put another hour or 2 into the layout and finish it up. And so it's always one more thing. So I'd almost rather do that. But
it's a very specific kind of horror.
Yeah, I guess. Well, the horror is the deadlines, but we don't really have the deadlines. The only thing we have super hard deadlines is the Year of Monsters and Year of Legends, because those have to come out on time. And the Eldamon, although we've been working as hard as we can to get it out, I'm still waiting for things. So I'm still waiting for some pictures and some charts. So even though I wanted to, I couldn't put it out today if I wanted to. So, but they should be done pretty quick. Anyhow. But here's the mimic. Don't forget. Now people are waking up. You see, for you, it's like 7:30 at night, Val. And meanwhile, for California, they're just getting up and they're like getting ready to start. And now people are like streaming in. See?
But they get to like wake up to beautiful teeth.
That's beautiful teeth. That's right.
It's a beautiful thing to wake up to. I mean, and especially because all of these teeth have been hand collected by the two of you.
That's right.
That's
have you played Mothership? Have you tried that game?
I have.
Oh,
yeah, I have. I played like 3 games. I mean, 2 one-shots, one of them that turned into a 2-shot. But yeah, I have.
Well, we played Mothership, and Baron ran it for us at Gen Con when we played. The problem when I play games like that, so I'm wondering how you handle that. You see, I embrace the horror because they were like, oh, it started off, and of course it's like an Alien, knockoff, and we were on a place, and there was like a loader, and the loader was just filled with slime and gunk and alien goo. And I'm like, oh, cool. I jump in. And you can see the horror on Baron's face. He's like, what do you mean you jump in? I'm like, I go into it. And he's like, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to try to get infected. I'm like, why not? And so sure enough, I got infected and started to kill everyone by the end and like killed off everybody. But that was the fun part because I got to be the bad guy, and then I was the bot. I was the horror. I was the one. Actually, it ended with Professor Dungeon Master setting the self-destruct. Mark, listen to this. How about this?
Yeah,
for
you
game?
told me about
this is
the
some
fact
game.
that he set the self-destruct, and then
the
you were
who's who,
somehow on the escape
this.
pod that someone who had already jettisoned
Ben.
was on, and it didn't really add
Ben
up
Milton.
in terms of the timing.
Ben
Ben Milton had already left,
Yes.
and he was like, "Why is Steven on there?
Right.
The timing doesn't add up. I jettisoned way before this happened."
I didn't run back. So anyhow, long story short, it was like me, and so Professor Dungeon Master blows up the space station, killing everyone. He thinks he kills me. Ben Milton, he from Questing Beasts, he left a long time ago, and then Baron's like, and he's going back to Earth, and then it comes to a shot of like me appearing and killing him, and he's like, "Come on, you can't do that." It's like I got away. I left way before any of that shenanigans happened, and we're like, "Oh well." So
The chaotic of it is beautiful.
yes, and again, I won. If you can't really win Mothership, but if you could
You
win,
won by losing.
You can't win
I won.
TTRPGs, but that day you won.
that way I won. Ben's still angry about that.
Yeah.
That was a good game. Have you seen The Thing? I presume you've seen The Thing.
I have.
John Carpenter's.
And
Okay.
it's really good.
Yes,
it's really, really good. I love it.
The funny thing about The Thing is that when that came out, it did terrible. It was actually
Really?
yeah. Oh, there's a long story about how it came out and how difficult it was to shoot and everything. And it was like a huge flop. And then, of course, since then, now people are like, classic, one of the greatest movies ever, let alone one of the greatest psychological and horror movies ever. And plus, it just looks so, it looks like they're freezing because they were, it's like, it just looks uncomfortable. Everything about it is uncomfortable.
Yeah. It really feels I don't know. It's just like the sensory of it is
impressive.
Really cool.
It's very oppressive. But sometimes you can go too far. So I'll tell you another movie that's like that, but it went too far. The Revenant. Have you ever seen The Revenant? I
have not seen The Revenant.
So The Revenant is by
very recent, isn't it?
That has DiCaprio in it. And that's the one where he's attacked by the bear. And the movie, this is what's interesting about the movie, is that the entire movie was filmed on location in the woods. And so when he's falling in the river, he's really falling in the river. Like when it's, and in fact, the lighting for the movie isn't even all that great because they filmed it in real locations. And that everything that's happening in the movie, they're really doing. So it's very uncomfortable to watch on so many levels because you're like, okay, this movie is uncomfortable from a movie point of view because it's like the things that are happening in this movie is just horrible. It's just horrible. And then I'm like, but they're actually doing it. like he looks freezing cold because he's freezing cold. Like they're filming this and he's actually freezing cold. And I know he'll eventually go to the trailer and get warmed up, but he looks miserable throughout this movie, which is also, and it's a subtle difference because in The Thing, they really filmed that. They were freezing. This is in the 80s. There's no CGI. The whole thing is practical. So when they look like they're cold, they're really cold. But it doesn't look like they're uncomfortably cold. It just looks like they're cold. But then you see The Revenant, and it's like, okay, this just looks uncomfortable. in every aspect. And it's a subtle difference between going too far versus, just making it very atmospheric. I don't know if we can learn anything from that, but I think about that a lot, is that sometimes these movies go too far. Another one that actually is good.
The same way I think the TTRPG can go too far as well, right? I mean, you can have moments where it's great to make someone feel scared in a horror game, but I mean, there is such a thing as making them actually uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah. And there's a lot of movies that do that. Like there's a whole genre of like, if you look up these, like there's a list, they say movies you'll only watch once and you'll never watch again. And there's a lot of them, and it's like they go too far, and I feel like the problem with that with a game is that if you go too far, that you might lose them as players. It's the same reason. It's like, well, I watched that movie.
You might lose them as players. You could even lose them as friends.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean,
so you always want to try to get some degree of consent on that. And even if you have prior consent, make sure that your players know when you're going into something really heavy like horror, that it's okay to tap out and be like, I need to pause for a moment. This is getting to be a bit too much for me.
Yeah, I mean,
there's
that's
also like
thing with the movie, you just walk out or stop watching. But it's hard when you're in the middle of the game and like.
Yeah, because there's also like I think like a lot of people like feel pretty bad. I've definitely had like a session like that when I first started playing, where I felt I was still a beginner player. I didn't really know, how this goes, and I felt like a bit scared of telling people like, oh, this is a bit too much for me. And I really hope that like that can be a thing that people don't feel, that like you should be able to just like remove yourself in a situation, like just say, hey, like I don't really vibe with this. I'd like to like tap out. But I think especially when we were talking earlier about tropes of powerlessness. Oh, that's hard to say. And yeah, right. It's like when you've said the word so many times, now it just loses completely. The word itself makes no sense. But we were talking about that earlier, and I think especially in those cases, because agency is something that we play around so much, like that we play with so much in horror, and agency is one of the things that gets to a player the most. I think being really careful with it. But I think my definition of agency and my gaming group's definition of agency, I think has changed a lot since we started playing Call of Cthulhu, because, well, I mean, that forces you to see differently, right? And I realized that a lot of things that we allow ourselves to put on each other is not stuff that most people would necessarily feel comfortable with in a game, and just would be feeling like that's just taking player agency away, right? But it is something to have an ongoing conversation about, not simply during session 0, but just to kind of keep checking with people between games, during a campaign, or, during little breaks if it's a one shot. But yeah, just reading body language generally as well, because it can be, there's some games that can get really, really intense, right? I mean, I've not actually in real life experienced eldritch horrors, so I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be too tough of a theme for me to get into. But there are TTRPGs with themes are so much more serious, right? And that feels so much more real. I think one game that I really want to play these days is Bluebeard's Bride. Which it sounds so cool. It sounds so cool, but it also sounds like it could be a lot.
I've heard about the game. I've heard it's a very strange game, but I have heard of that. I don't know anyone who's played it though.
I haven't played it yet, but I'm really interested in it. I think also, I mean, like we said earlier, there's different types of fear, right? Like there's different like categories of it, and this one is specifically like domestic fear, like female fear. I mean, this is Bluebeard's story, right? Like this woman getting married to this man that she barely knows, and who eventually finds that room in the castle with the bodies of all the previous brides. It's very much like leaning on like female themes of fear. And I think in that case, because it can feel so real to some people, then I mean, you have to be really careful with it in a way that I wouldn't necessarily be careful with eldritch horror, you know. But yeah, sorry, I'm completely changing subject, but it's making me think, as we're talking about different categories of like different types of fear, like, is there specific tropes of fear that you guys particularly enjoy playing with? Like the same way like we talked about like mutation, for example, like we talked
body
about
horror
like,
is
corruption.
Body horror is a big one for a lot of people. I don't use it a ton, but I know a lot of people who like it. If I have players who like it, I'm happy to put it in. The sort of idea, the classic idea of like the gothic horror of like there's a price or there's a corruption and you're going down this path and like what have I become and what have I done is a theme that I sometimes like to explore. It's sort of a little bit more cerebral and less visceral than the body horror. One that I don't do as much is cosmic horror, like Lovecraftian, we're nothing, and there's just these giant space things doing stuff, just because I'm not as interested in running that in my games as some other game designers are. But I have done it before. It's just not like my big one. I do more, probably I would call it more gothic or maybe psychological horror as another trope that I sometimes use.
I mean, I was saying, I don't know, for my guys, it's because it's the same group I've been running for a very, very long time. So the horror I use is them always on the brink of death, because they don't like that. Danger is more of the horror. And actually, I'll tell you the funniest story that happened to us that scared the living daylights out of my players. Are you ready? This one's so weird, Mark. Wait till you hear this one.
Okay.
They were on a map, and they were infiltrating a thieves guild, and they're going from room to room, and they're like, okay, we'll go to this room. There's nothing there. They're like, okay. And they're looking and they're careful and they're like, okay, go to the next room. There's nothing there. And they went from room to room and every room was empty and they were freaked out. They told me to. They were like, and I could see they were freaked out. They're like, I don't like this. I don't like there's nothing here. It's like, why is there a big map? Why are we actually on like a pre-made map and there's nothing here? Like they're basically ready to go into combat, especially a pre-made map. It wasn't like I drew it. But like, why did they go through all this trouble to make a map, to put this here, and nothing is happening? And it really freaked them out. And I've always thought about that. I'm like, that they did not like that. And then they started to start kicking down doors and making noise because they're like, come out,
can't stand the silence anymore.
Right. It was like, exactly. It was too quiet. It turns out what ends up happening is like on their way out, everything comes out of the woodwork to kill them. So it was they go into it and then they got to fight their way out. But that really freaked them out big time, all of them. And I was like, huh.
I mean, it's completely subverting all the expectations that they have, right? I mean, it's you walk into a room, you expect to find things in this room, boom, there's nothing. You light a torch, you expect it to, light the room, it doesn't, boom, it's freaky, it's completely freaky. I love it. I love that.
Yeah, that actually worked probably better than anything I've ever done, is by giving them nothing. It's like,
but that's. I mean, there's a real. I mean, there's a like a reason behind that, right? It's the reason that like the less you give, the more their minds have to fill up that void with things, right? And they will always imagine something more freaking than what is actually there, I mean, it's the same reason why it's if you know there's a spider around but you don't see where it is, you imagine it to be in the worst possible places, like right next to your ear, or it's the more unknown there is, the harder it gets to really keep you cool. And it's perfect in that situation you just said, because I mean, there's nothing. There should be something, but there's nothing, and that's terrifying, because now their minds are going to fill up that space with whatever crazy thing it can conjure up, and that's I love it.
Well, then you must, because Quentin Tarantino, he does that all the time in his movies. He's like well known for that, is that he will conjure up and have imagined horrors more than you'll even have physical horrors.
Mm-hmm. Imagined horrors, that's a great word for it. I love that.
Because there's nothing that's actually usually as horrible as the worst thing we can imagine.
Well, our
imagination is too powerful.
I know, in a weird way.
Our imaginations are so powerful.
Yeah,
for the better or for the worse. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why Jaws was like. I mean, I'm way too old, because I was alive. I mean, I was very little. I was barely alive. But when I was alive and Jaws came out, it broke the psyche of America, because it came out during the summer and no one was going to beaches, no one was going into the ocean, and this is all people were talking about. It scared the living daylights out of everyone. Like, the entire country was terrified because of this movie. And it's like they didn't show anything, and it's like, but and they barely showed it. But I will have to say, seeing it at the end, and it's an animatronic, disgusting form, was actually worse. And in fact, the whole thing with the barrels in that movie is they couldn't show the shark, so they're like, we gotta show the shark. It's like, show barrels. The barrels are the shark, and those yellow barrels, and they're like, okay, and it works. I mean, that thing is a super duper masterpiece, and that's considered one of the great. I can go on and on about that movie, because it was the first blockbuster and first horror, and it was like Steven Spielberg did it when he was like 26, and it was like a lot of stories.
Now we've established that we're allowed to talk about movies.
I know, but that one is really, really interesting. I was like, Jaws can't be made today because so many children and adult bodies would lose their minds. Yes and no. I mean, if you think that's bad, I'll give you a few more that actually are on my list. Hold on, I'll give you one that's right up there that no one saw, and no one has seen this movie. And I will tell you, this movie has Keanu Reeves, and it was Ana de Armas, the first movie she ever did in America, ever, called Knock Knock. Has anyone even heard of this movie? No one's even heard of it. This movie will mess you up, and it's totally psychological. Is that Knock Knock? If you want to see a scary movie, watch that. That one will mess you up. It is Eli Roth, and it's about Keanu Reeves, and he's a father at home, and two young girls are caught in the rain, and their car broke down, and they ask if they can come in and dry off and call someone. And it actually uses technology. It's not one of those, oh, your cell phones don't work, blah, blah, blah. No, it's all very realistic. And these two girls who look very innocent are psychopaths. And I don't mean like, oh, they're kind of crazy. No, they're psychopaths. They're insane. And they do things that are very realistic and very horrible, and it gets worse and worse and worse. And what makes it so horrible is that it's just so real, and it's like, that could happen to me. There's nothing crazy about this movie, and that's up there. If you really want to see psychological horror of a realistic sort, see that movie. It's very good. and Keanu Reeves was right before John Wick came out. So he was still big, but he was still like on the downward slope because it's like The Matrix was over and stuff. So he did it. The whole movie made like, it only cost like $2 million, the whole movie. So he did it like on a whim. And the two actresses were brand new because now they're huge stars. Yeah, so people are writing in the chat. It's horrible. It's horrific. It's so realistic. It's frightening. And I find that's exactly right. It's like things that are so realistic. And I'd say even that's why Quentin Tarantino movies, they go a little crazy and sometimes they are a little bit out there. But, except for like, was it Dusk Till Dawn or any of his like, vampire movies, they're pretty realistic. Like, he's like, they're pretty realistic movies. And they often will take place in realistic environments with realistic people with like actual, strengths and weaknesses, which is what makes them so horrific. And actually, I think those movies, anything about mind game movies, and again, why I bring it up is
sorry,
that...
give me a second. My cat is being dumb. I'm so sorry.
Your cat's going crazy. Is there anything that you have seen, Mark? Like, you don't watch a lot of movies, but do you actually, or do you not even watch these type of movies, or you don't use this?
Well,
or do you use other media when you're thinking about it?
I don't watch a lot of movies. Like I've seen obviously some movies. I've seen some plays. I'll watch TV because it's shorter, and so like if I have a short break, I can watch a TV episode, but not a movie. Also, I will watch movies sometimes just like on like some kind of online movie if I do have enough time to watch it. I almost never watch movies in theaters with friends because I get to see people so infrequently usually. Yeah. And it's like, if it's like, wow, it's my friend, they've come and they like want to watch a movie, I'm like, that is the last thing I want to do because I'm not going to be able to talk to you. Or if I do, I will be very rude to everyone else in the movie. We're just going to be sitting in a dark room. We might as well not have met up if we're going to go to a movie. Like that's one of my personal hot takes about a cultural experience that most people just love doing is that it is among the like obviously it's like I'll either go to a movie with you or we can't hang out. Obviously it's better than that, but like among the bottom 3 things that you could do if you know you're gonna have a hangout and it could be anywhere.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe that's just me.
That's just you, but ironically I'm the opposite because like whenever I see my parents, my wife's like, why you guys, whenever you see your parents, all you do is sit around and watch movies? I'm like, I don't know. It's just like our thing. We like to like bond over them. To us, it's social.
Are you sitting around at home and watching them though? Or are you going to a theater?
Yeah. But it's
because at home you can kind of bond over it with someone. You can be like, oh man, did they just do that? It's going to do this other thing next. Or you can just like be the peanut gallery, be Statler and Waldorf, and it can be fun. But at a theater, you can't say anything. You're just it's dark. You can't even see them.
Not at the theater, but after the theater, you have like something you can already talk about. Yeah, I think it's especially nice when you haven't seen the person for a while because then you have a topic. Because then you you have something to talk about. I think it's also like it's good for people that you haven't seen in a while, or for people that you see so much, and it's like, oh yeah, like we're finding new things to talk about, and like confronting each other to like thoughts that we wouldn't necessarily have brought up if we hadn't gone to see this movie that just brought them up. But during the movie, for sure, you can't talk. But after the movie, you go for a drink or you go for a meal, and that's when you talk. Yeah.
So here's my take on that, which is that because I've had discussions with people before on this, I've heard that one, which is in my case. Then I would rather be like, okay, so we're gonna meet up on Wednesday. And we have up to 3, we have, let's say 4 hours, which would be long enough to watch a movie and then go for, to like a restaurant or something afterwards and talk and hang out and talk about it. So we could do that. Or we could say sometime before Wednesday, let's all watch this movie. We're all going to watch it separately, like at our own leisure. And then on Wednesday, we can hang out for 4 hours and we start by talking about the movie. Or maybe spend all of it talking about the movie. It's like a book club. Like I would not want to spend 2 or 3 or however many hours the movies are out of my 4 hours on watching it then when I had to get everyone together. That's just, it's me being a logistics guy.
So all right. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I am getting hungry, and then we can do this all night. but I know
We
Val
could.
has
Val
to
is
go
like
to
a
work.
really
I know.
engaging guest.
Val, are you enjoying it? I mean, we don't keep you forever, but
I'm having a lot of fun. I could keep talking about movies for a long time,
Oh,
and now
well.
you keep flashing from time to time this amazing mimic, and I mean, it makes me want to stick around so I
all
can
right.
see it
Well,
some more.
I'll tell you one. I'll tell you one other thing, because someone mentioned Stephen King, so I'm a huge fan. I've read almost all of his books. I actually even took a course. So how about this? Oh, Val, you would have loved this. I took a course called, I think it was called it was something like Mystery and Horror in Literature.
Did you
And-
take it like online, or
No,
like
that was it was
it?
in school. It's an actual course. It was like an
Oh, wow.
advanced. It was advanced like English course, and we
Cedar was
studied.
at Carnegie Mellon, which is not only a top computer science university in the United States, but also has a top drama program.
And
So,
literature.
like, it's got to be a place where you're going to
And
see
literature.
great crossovers.
Yeah, and actually, it's creative
Cool.
writing. It's one of the top schools in the world for creative writing. So there's a lot of good English type courses there, and we
Do they have a scholarships? Can I do a master's there?
Yeah, they have masters. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
they you can look it up. It's a little hard to get into, just a touch. I mean, but you can look at it. They'll take someone overseas more than they would take someone in the United States now. I'll tell you that much. Mark, you don't have those. Mark went to MIT. I went to CMU. These schools are so freaking hard to get into now. It's like a miracle when I see some people that are getting into these schools. I don't know if I would get in this at this
They
time.
were hard to get into even when I was
when we went, it was
trying to
hard.
get in. I would
Now it's
like
like
the people
impossible.
in the years before me.
Impossible.
It would be like, why did this guy not get into MIT? Like, what's even going on? I don't get it.
I don't want to tell you. I
um,
have stories because my kids are
I
going
was
through
lucky,
this now.
I guess.
I don't think I was. Yeah, I think I diverse.
I know for
I think I
sure it's
diverse.
definitely a lot
Good
easier to
melon.
get scholarships
Oh well,
when you're,
scholarships. Yeah.
I think, from abroad.
Yeah,
So-
MIT basically
I mean,
doesn't.
I
doesn't
get the
do it.
reasoning behind it though. Like I get the reasoning of like outside of the US, people don't pay that much money from school,
No.
which seems absolutely crazy how much like student loans can be. And so
Well, that's a
I mean,
whole
if
other
you're going
subject
to
we won't
want
get
to-
into. Yes.
Oh
you
yeah.
will destroy your life. Everyone they like it that way. Anyhow,
yeah.
back to this. One of the things we studied
Yes.
was Stephen King. We studied it was very interesting. We studied a lot of literature, but we studied Stephen King, and it wasn't just like reading Stephen King, which we did, but how he structures his stories.
Mhm.
And one of the things he does in a lot of his stories is he starts off his stories. You know this thing where people will always flip to the end of an actual
Yeah.
mystery, and a lot of people do it.
And then like rewind.
And then no, they'll flip in a book. I'm talking about books. So they'll turn to the end of the book,
Okay.
read the final to see what happens, and then they read the rest of the book, and they actually enjoy doing it. And in fact, there's even a scene in When Harry Met Sally where Billy Crystal's reading Misery as a joke, and then because the director of Misery is the same as Harry Met Sally, and then you see him start the book, and the first thing he does is flip to the back of the book to read it because it's sort of a thing. It turns out that people kind of like that, and the psychology of like they want to actually. It's not necessarily they like the mystery, but they almost want to know the outcome, and then they want to figure out like how it got to that
How
and
it get
see.
there? Yeah.
So what Stephen King does in most of his books is he'll start off the books, and right in the beginning, he will tell you the outcome in some way. He won't tell you exactly the outcome. It's very tricky the way he does it, but he'll usually say, it's like, oh, I'm trying to think of an example. Like, a perfect example is The Green Mile. Like, The Green Mile starts off with Tom Hanks's character old, and in modern day, and horrible things are going to happen because he ran the electric chair at a prison, and it's him reminiscing about all these horrible things and how he ended up being the way he is now. So you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you see where it starts at the end and then rewinds to the beginning, and you're
And you
like,
get to see the journey.
it takes you through the journey. And that I also like to do in my role-playing games, is that it's a little hard to do, but you can do it through NPCs, is that you'd be like, oh, you see an NPC, and maybe they'll tell you to go on an adventure, and this guy's all messed up, and he's like, oh yeah, we went on this adventure, everyone died, I'm insane. It's like, but you'll be fine. And so you're not telling them exactly.
You will definitely be fine.
You'll
Take my
be
word on it.
fine. Don't worry about it. Even though we all died and lots of other people died and hundreds of other people have tried to stop this evil, you'll be fine. So you're not exactly telling them what's going to happen, but something's going to happen. And even Strahd, I think, does that a little. Like, it's like people have been there before and all faced and had horrible deaths or horrible experiences. So you could do that through rumor, or you could do that through NPCs, that it's like, okay, we know something bad is going to happen, and we know even the results of some of these bad things. So, but we're still going to go there anyhow, because that can't happen to us. And then slowly, even better if you do that to them, so they have no excuse. And then by the end, where they're all dead or they're like insane, you're like, you knew this was going to happen. I literally said that on the first session this was going to happen. You have no excuse.
It was all there. It was all there. I mean, your fault if you decided to disregard the fine print.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
It's like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Another one. Remember?
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly.
oh yeah, you ignored the fine print.
Yeah.
So did people learn stuff? Did people learn ways to make their games more horrible? Or did they just find all these new movies to watch? So
I hope so. I think we just mostly like rambled a lot, but I mean, it was fun. I hope people learned stuff. I hope any of this made sense. Did stuff make sense?
It made sense to me, but I was also on it. And like, I thought this discussion was really fun, and it brought up certain aspects that I don't always think about. And we each had sort of different perspectives on some of the topics. So I thought it flowed really well from my perspective. Let's see what people think in the chat.
Abandon all hope, ye who enter here, except for you. Yeah, that's a good exactly right. It's like, beware of dog. Oh, okay, you walk in, a dog attacks you. It's like, how did we know? How did we not know? It's like, it literally told you to beware of the dog, but that's something you could do in your games. It's like you could just telegraph, like, oh yeah, this is going to happen, and then they seem to still be surprised when it happens. So
well, but that's the cool thing with also, I think, how to say, playing with bad decisions, right? It's making your players geared towards making bad decisions. Like, the dog is going to attack, but like, I mean, you still need that thing. You still need to be going wherever you need to be going. So, I mean, now you just better hope the dog is just a Chihuahua. Wait, no, actually, Chihuahuas are the worst.
I know. I was like, Chihuahuas? Are you kidding? They're like super mean.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was a
bad.
bad. Again, I'm not good at metaphors.
Oh, okay.
But I hope people got it.
Oh, I know what you meant. In other words, it's a cute little small dog. It's
it's like a Jack Russell or something. Yeah.
Well, that's what happened, because I have 2 dogs, and they're terriers, and they're very cute, and they're very fluffy, and they're very silly, and people are like, and I won't get into it, but I had like something happen in my house, and I was like, oh, these dogs, if something happened and someone like broke in, like, these dogs would kill that guy. Like, they'd kill him. They're like, what are you talking about? Those dogs are so sweet. Like, they're terriers, and terriers are actually the meanest dogs. They're like bred to kill, and
my parents have a terrier. Actually, it depends, because there's different kinds of terriers,
there
right?
are.
Like,
well, these are
ours is a Cairn Terrier, which is like the same as Toto from The Wizard of Oz.
They kill,
and she
mice.
would not kill.
Oh, they love mice. Put some mice in front of them. They'll be killing those mice left and right.
See, ours is like, she was a grandma from the moment she was born.
Oh, really?
She's kind of like me. She couldn't hurt to fly. She talks a lot of game, but I mean, it's all sizzle, no steak.
Oh, well, the point is like, it's like, oh, these cute little dogs. I'm like, these cute little dogs will tear your throat out if you do something. Yeah. Like they're still dogs in the end of the day. Yeah. That's the other thing. It's like, people are like, oh, look at those cute bears. Look at the cute lions. I'm like, how much they'll just kill you.
A full-grown killer.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Someone, let's see. You can't find the episode, but you guys touched on what programs you prefer to use when producing work, like supplemental materials. Can't find it. Looking for some advice. Love the show. Producing work? What do you mean producing work?
Do they mean videos, or do they mean like the books that we write?
I mean, I
Or,
use
like-
InDesign. InDesign is what we use, and for all the
Design's
books.
great.
And
Yeah, we create
Photoshop.
like documents first, and then we import those into InDesign for the layout. And I use InCopy because I don't need to do the design part. Steven does the layout. I do the copy fitting and such.
Someone started to just read the synopsis of Knock Knock, that movie I told you about. Had to stop halfway through. It's just that awful. I'm like, yeah.
I'm gonna look that up as soon as the stream ends.
It's not even a long movie.
And I'm probably not gonna sleep tonight.
It's
Tell us if you gain
messed
super
up.
speed, I guess.
It's messed up, that movie. I'll give you a lot.
All right,
I'll give you a
all
lot.
right.
That's only one. There's some on that list. I'll
You,
tell
you
you.
gave me a lot. I'm
I
gonna
gave you a
start.
lot.
I'm gonna start chronologically. I'm gonna start with the ones that we started with. I'm going to start with Murder by Death.
Murder by Death. That's just fun. I love that movie. It is so silly and goofy. It'll help more if you know who the characters are. If you don't know who the characters are, just look them up
That
later.
sounds like one of the best ones you
No, that's the best
suggested
one.
here. Plus,
Oh,
Neil
yeah.
Simon's stuff is usually pretty good.
Neil Simon with Truman Capote. Truman Capote
And you
is
said
the
Maggie
lead.
Smith is in there too.
What's that?
And you said Maggie Smith is in there too.
Yes, Maggie Smith. It's amazing when you see the who's who of characters in that.
And then you talked about Tim Curry, but that was in.
That's Clue. That's
in Clue, yeah.
great.
That's in
Clue
Clue.
is great. Well, Tim Curry
Yeah.
is like my favorite.
For some reason, I've heard so much about Clue, but I've never seen it.
You should just watch it.
But yeah.
It's really it's a little much. It's like I guarantee the first time you watch, you might not know what's going on. It's one of those you got to watch a couple times to really to get the hang of it. But that's good. I mean, I
That's
can
the
give
fun of
100
it.
movies.
I like to piece the puzzle while I'm watching. I think that's maybe why I could, you mentioned about like people like skipping to the end of the book to
Mhm.
get the end of the mystery and then see what's happening, like how we get there. I could never do that with a mystery. I like the great majority of the fun for me is in trying to figure it out and piece the puzzle together before the reveal, which is why I love Knives Out so much.
Mhm.
Because it allows me to do that. While sadly, a lot of like murder mystery stuff, it's like, I mean, Hercule Poirot stuff is great, I mean, like, but I mean, I know already how all these stories end. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm trying
So,
to think.
I'm excited.
I am kind of surprised. Well, in that case, because Clue you can figure out. The other problem with a lot of these movies is that movies can cheat. Someone said that Knives Out cheated. They see they can cheat by not showing you from
Glass
certain
Onion
points.
cheated.
What's that?
Glass Onion cheated.
The Glass
the
Onion
second
cheated.
Knives Out.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Glass Onion
I
did
don't know.
cheat.
When did Knives Out cheat? I feel like Glass Onion did, but not Knives Out. Glass Onion, I was really sad. I had seen it the first time. I was like, oh, this happened. I know what's going on. And then it showed something different. But
Yeah, I mean Clue.
when did
Right,
Knives
Clue
Out
did have
cheat?
multiple endings, different and right. So you can put it together. There is one ending
Yeah.
though. The official ending is the last one that you watch, and that's actually the
Okay.
most satisfying one too. The other two endings do feel like cheats because you're like, eh. It's like I can kind of, and the reason they work is because they don't show you what all the characters are doing at all times. That's the problems. Oh, Knives Out was saying that there was zero setup for the false knife. That's not true because I knew it. In fact, I knew that was going to happen. There was, didn't they show? They
There
did
was a
show the
setup in the
false.
beginning.
Yeah, they showed the
when they
false
were
knife.
showing the scene with Marta and
They show the false knife.
yeah.
I think that was pretty honest. That was a pretty honest. I'll give you another
However-
psychological horror.
Oh, sorry.
Single white female. Have you seen that one?
I have not.
Well,
I will write it on the list.
Funny Games. Funny Games is pretty famous. That one's actually that one's messed up. I actually don't like Funny Games because it's so brutal and so horrible. It crosses the line in my opinion. It sort of goes, it's just nasty for being nasty. Single white female is the roommate from hell. That's what it literally is.
All right.
And everyone can relate to that. It's like you get a roommate and you think they're one way, and then they turn out to be very different, and then you don't know what to do because they're your roommate, and then it gets worse and worse. And yeah, that one's messed up, that one.
A completely random thing, but just because we were just talking about mystery, that is something. Just finding it somewhere in my brain. That is something I'm really interested in. Is how to make a whodunit work for TTRPG, because there are plenty of ways to make mystery work for TTRPG, but a whodunit, I haven't yet found a way to make it happen. And
What do you mean by
that
whodunit?
sounds really
What do you
great.
mean versus a mystery? What do you mean?
Like a whodunit, like a yeah, like I mean a murder mystery, like a closed murder mystery.
Really, actually, I'm kind of surprised. So when I was growing up in the 80s, this was really popular, murder mystery parties. Okay.
Oh, I've done those, and these are great.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, like, if you're thinking of like a TTRPG, for me, the main problem with doing a whodunit in a TTRPG is that if I'm going to do a mystery adventure, I mean, mystery is all about like revealing information little by little, right? But if you're in a TTRPG, you expect interactivity, while if you're just revealing information and it's just like a 4-hour one shot of just talking to different NPCs, it's not going to be the most entertaining game ever, right? So trying to find a way, when I write mysteries, I always try and find ways that you acquire this information that are more interactive, like either like revealing them through puzzles, through like some chases, like this kind of thing. And so I think that's also what makes like what made Knives Out also kind of entertaining, right? Is like you don't just like spend the entire time talking to people. There's like this car chase scene. There's like this thing in the warehouse, and for me it's that. For me it's in mystery and TTRPG. It's having to find ways to present information that makes it interactive, and so it doesn't feel like you're just interviewing people for 4 hours, but rather like you are doing things that feel like a variety of things. And for me, and so I don't know how to make that work for whodunit, and that's something that I will need to figure out. I'm filing it somewhere in my brain, but something to think about. I don't know. Yeah,
you can do that for a future one. So we will wrap up. So once again, if you want this mimic, you only have 42 hours left. If you want to get it for free, I mean, you can buy it, but if you go to yearofmonsters.com or click on, I'll give a link here, you can actually get it up. And then tomorrow we have Jack Packard on at 3. For those of you who are fans of his from Red Letter Media, I'm a huge fan of his, or from Adventures Nigh on Second Wind. He's actually wrapping up. That's what he's actually on for, because Adventures Nigh is a 10-episode actual play, and he is going to be talking about the last 3 episodes, because they came out like a year and a half ago, and they stopped before it can finish. So now they're redoing it. So people have been waiting like a year for this actual play to end. So now he's going to finally get to see it. So we can talk about that. Hard Candy. I've never seen Hard Candy. I've never even heard of Hard Candy as a psychological thriller, but
Hard Candy, you said?
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
I'm not seeing the chat. I will go back and look at the chat, but I can't see it right now.
I've never heard of Hard Candy.
Hard Candy. All right.
Patrick Wilson. Huh. Actually, absolutely terrifying. Patrick Wilson, Elliot Page, Sandra Oh. That sounds terrifying. So, kind of an interesting cast. Well, I will tell you the scariest movie I've ever seen. And I guarantee it's not going to be something anyone
Is it like the movie of this episode?
Nope.
Okay.
In real life, no. The scariest movie I ever saw that I never saw it again. I would probably watch it again, but I watched it when I was a teenager, and it was so realistic that I can't watch it. And it was also a huge, huge hit when it came out. This is what everyone was talking about, and it became like a big psychological thriller in everyone's mind. Is Fatal Attraction. Believe it or not, if anyone saw that movie from 1987, it's a very simple movie. It's basically this guy, he's married, he has a one-night stand with a woman, and the woman is insane. and then the woman starts to track him down. And this is before the internet, and so it was like,
Oh, it's like a stalker kind of movie.
yes, it's like the stalker movie, and it is terrifying because she really keeps going, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and it's very realistic. It's very like he can't get rid of this woman, and this woman just like gets into his life and then meets his wife, and it's like, oh boy, what do you do? And it just gets worse and worse and worse. It's like, and that's what makes it so favorite. It's like, wow, I guess I will never cheat in my entire life, because if this is what could happen, this is the best movie ever for don't cheat on your significant other. I'll tell you right now.
That's great.
Well, that one,
I mean, a good morale, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm saying like Single White Female, same thing. I think these movies work so well because it's like I get a roommate
because it feels like it's daily life, right? Like it feels like
it just happened.
Tropes of not even tropes, like it is like daily life, and it is like so relatable, such relatable situations. Yeah,
it's relatable to you, and so it makes it feel more personal. Like like there are a lot of famous horror movies that aren't like the Blair Witch Project. How many people actually go out with a camera looking for some kind of cryptid in the woods? Like, you probably haven't done that. Maybe you did. Maybe you were really terrified by it. But...
I mean, that's what I do every Friday night.
Oh yeah, I guess there are more cryptids out there in France to look for.
I'm actually I mean, I've encountered plenty at this point, and I can say with all honesty and complete certainty that the Blair Witch Project is so unrealistic.
I was bored out of my mind by that movie. I know people.
But if it's something that's mundane and it's like, this is something that's like in my life, I can imagine this as it started, before it started getting twisted and horrible.
Yeah.
That somehow makes it more visceral and impactful.
Yeah. That's the comforting and the familiar that
right. And that's what these movies like Single White Female, Funny Games, Knock Knock, it's like these could happen to you. Like you could see this happening to you, as opposed to like Supernatural or like The Fly. The Fly is like just body horror. Like that's not happening. It's like you could have body horror. So wait,
you never had all of your fingernails like suddenly start to drop?
I've had them drop, but not because of that.
Okay.
You smash them in a door, then it might come off. But other than that, no. That movie though is too much. That movie's too much in the other direction. That one's like too much body horror. So I never saw The Fly 2. I heard The Fly 2 is way worse. Like that one. Just,
I haven't seen it. Yeah, I haven't seen either. Because it's The Fly is a remake, right? Like there was an earlier movie
in the 50s.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one either.
Well, any of the 50s movies, I mean, it's funny because like that, they consider that horror, and then you watch it now and it's so tame. But there's a couple of older movies that hold up that are terrifying. 12 Angry Men. Watch that. That's terrifying, but in a different way. And that one's
also, I love how we keep saying we're going to end the stream, and we just keep talking more about movies.
Oh, that's a Roll for Combat Live specialty.
No, that's a specialty. Well, because I can talk about movies forever, because it's my favorite topic. It's like
sometimes there'll be like a thing where like people where I am are ordering dinner, and they're like, Mark, when are you going to be off the stream? And I'll be like, well, it's I'll be like, it's 2:15 now. Steven said we were ending on the stream like 20 minutes ago, and then he also said to me beforehand that at 2 he absolutely had to leave for an appointment. So probably like by 3.
Well, I am starving.
The latest.
All right, I'll give you another one. 1 hour photo. That one's another creepy one, and that one's got
1 hour photo. You say
1 hour photo with Robin Williams.
Photo. And now I have a list so long. At first I told myself I'm going to be able to report back to you like a week from now or something.
Well,
and now I'm like,
1 hour photo is weird because it's this guy, and he develops film in a lab, and he looks at the film, and he becomes obsessed with the people, and then he starts to develop other film and sees what these people are doing in secret with each other, and he gets obsessed and angry because he's like using them as a narration of his own life. And then he gets angry because I think certain people are cheating on people, and then he gets angry and then he confronts them. So again, it's like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. These are like really very low concept movies. You know, it's just literally a guy who looks at your film and is obsessed with your life. And then you start living your life in ways that he does not approve, and he feels like he has to intervene. You know, and again, you think of that stuff like that is messed up, and it's not that impossible, especially today with social media. I could easily see them remake that movie with someone following you on Facebook or something, you know, and then you're like, oh, and then they don't like what you're doing. And I think people already do that. In fact, I think people already do that on Facebook and Twitter, and like they don't approve, you know, they don't approve of things, and they're angry and yelling at you and yelling at everyone. So anyhow, I give you a 20. There's enough. I'm done. No more. I keep
you know
going.
what? One time we will do an episode specifically on movies.
Yeah.
Well,
And that way you have like
I think that's
only
every
one.
episode.
We had one episode before that was what are Steven's top 5 tips that you can learn from movie script writing for tabletop RPGs.
Oh, that was a good episode.
It's one of the least viewed episodes on the channel
Really?
other than the actual plays.
Oh, that
But
was
my
one of my
dad,
best.
who sometimes watches this, said
It's like one of my
that it was
best
by far
episodes.
his favorite episode on it, and I liked it a
that
lot.
makes me sad because
I
that's
know.
one video
I thought it was
idea
one of
I
our
wanna do
best
soon.
episodes.
I think that from a technical standpoint of what we not only how useful and interesting the content that we provided in it was, but like how like we also kind of kept to a script on it, sort of. We didn't have a pre-written script, but we like went from point to point. Steven knew in advance what his 5 tips were, and we stayed on topic. Like there was a lot to love about that episode, but it just happened that people, I guess there's not, what's the hook on it though? People are like, when they see, oh, it's 5 things I can learn from script movie script writing, like, so what are those 5 things? I don't care that it's for movie script writing, so they don't click, I guess, search engine optimization wise.
You know what? I did this. That's how popular it was. I did the same talk at Gen Con. That's how much I enjoyed it. And I used the
It was
same
great.
tips.
It was a great topic. And like I said, my dad, who doesn't really do tabletop
thought it
RPGs,
was our
even he
best
said it was
episode.
one of the first times he understood what Linda, my wife, who was in charge of like doing adventures, like she was in charge of the adventure department at Paizo, said, I understand what Linda does more now because Steven compared it to a movie script, which I do know, and how those techniques could be used. And now that makes a whole lot more sense.
Oh, that was something else.
Would you send that to me? The link to it. I want to see it.
Sure. Or Mark can find it.
Yeah, I'll take a look for it. I'm not doing enough other stuff right now, so I should probably be
Find
searching
it.
for.
Find it.
I'm only
I'm playing with the
like
minutes.
16
You can
different
find it.
tasks, so I'm good.
But wait, so Val, you got to come to. We were bugging you and Hannah to come to Gen Con. You have to come to Gen Con. If you're only going to go to one convention, it's Gen Con. Have you been to the state? Oh, that's right. You used to live here.
I really want to, but like, do you know how much plane tickets are to go to?
there's
Actually,
so
you know what?
much.
I feel like the plane tickets
They're going down.
would be
if you get them
better
early,
than actually like staying on site. You know, like finding a hotel around.
Yeah, the
Gen Con.
hotel
I feel
is
like
a
that
nightmare.
is expensive.
Yeah, the hotel's a bit
Yeah.
of a nightmare.
You could also try to do some kind of like crowdfunding for you to go to Gen Con that you like put up on like a
I would
video
feel
or
so
something like
bad
that.
doing that. I think I just need to, because the thing is I have terrible spending habits. I think I just need to get my stuff together and just figure it out. I
Well,
just have bad spending habits, but
okay.
I'll figure it out. I'm not sure if it will happen this year. I really want to. I
You would
really
like
want
it.
to.
And Hannah, she wants to go too. Although she lives here. She lives like
Yeah.
in Oklahoma, so a little
I
easier
want
for
to
her.
meet Hannah. I haven't actually really gotten like that much of a chance to talk to Hannah, but I keep having like people telling me, you and Hannah.
Well, we had Hannah. We
And
can
I'm
have
like,
them both on the
I
show.
want to check it out.
We could do that. We could have them both on the
Yeah.
show in the future.
Yeah, we could. That'd be a fun episode.
Mm-hmm. And then we could talk about.
Yeah.
Like, I think we could do an episode that was about like the horror
Or
of fairy tales.
Fairy tales.
Right?
That's what it's like.
If we
Well,
did
she
the
like-
horror of fairy
That'd be
tales,
amazing.
because that covers like sort of Val's interest in horror and Hannah's interest in fae, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
like people think of them as, oh, they're nice, but like those fairy tales were to scare children into acting the way that they were supposed to. So, and there's a lot of real creepy stuff about it. So I think like dark fairy tales, like the horror of fairy tales, could be a good episode that would bring. We could bring both of them on.
Now, people think of fairy tale. They think of the abridged ones, the ones that were cleaned up by Disney,
Disney.
not the original. The originals are terrible. They're all Disney-fied. I'm like, no, you're talking about the Disney-fied fairy tales. You guys are talking about the wrong ones. It's like fairy tales are
I don't know. I mean, the
horrible.
Hunchback of Notre Dame kind of slaps. Let's be honest.
They are really, really horrible. So,
but like the original Victor Hugo is good too.
all right. Did you find that link, Mark, or no?
I am looking for it.
Oh, it's taking you so
The
long.
problem is it did not use, when I did try to do Control F, it did not use the keywords that I thought it did. And so I am looking for it. It is newer than I thought it was. So I was scrolling from our oldest ones up and I have not yet found it. Did you find it?
Ugh, you're making me look. You can search for it. You can search in the chat.
If I
Right. Oh
can,
no,
like-
I got it.
Okay.
There it is. There it is.
Because you could search in the.
I'm about to
role for
send it
combat.
into the YouTube chat for everybody who's watching the episode as well. They may have actually already found it while I was looking for it, because I was obviously not on this page while I was on that
See,
page.
too much multitasking.
No, I mean, it was too much of focusing on the main task. If I multitasked more and they had found it, I might have found it sooner.
Mhm. There we go.
If I could have just been multitasking more here, I put it also into our meeting chat as well as into
I'll
the
take it
YouTube
now
chat.
because I think it will disappear after we
It's
leave,
a
right?
short.
Yeah.
It's a short episode as well.
If you don't mind, I'm just putting it into our Discord chat.
Yeah,
stream,
that-
and
that
that way
makes
we'll find it
sense.
again later.
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
not in that Discord chat, so I'm putting it where I can.
There we go. Oh, she found it. Yeah. 5 ways to use new tricks in your
I
games.
sent it.
Oh, okay.
And she just told you she was putting it in the Discord chat.
Oh, I thought she asked me to put it in the Discord chat. Yeah, only 3,600. That's definitely low for
like
us.
considering how much that I think that it was a really solid episode with some interesting insights, it didn't have that many views.
I think that was like the best one we ever did.
Well, let's give it some love. Let's go.
Yeah, well, this
let's
should
go over
get
there
some
and watch it.
Surprised. We'll do it again. That's my Gen Con talk. It's like because I thought whatever. Anyhow, all right. Now I'm going. I'm done. Val, where can people find you?
Literally only one place. On YouTube at Corkboards and Curiosities.
Is that what you have in your background?
That's one of my corkboards. One of them. I have
One
many of them.
Oh, really? Is that why I can't? I was like, what?
I really like corkboards.
Obviously, so much so you named your channel after them. I was like, that. I've never had one.
I was originally supposed to do the corkboards and the curiosities. It turns out I never actually got around to the curiosities. But hey, maybe someday.
Well, what about that lamp behind you? That looks like a curiosity. The green.
That one?
Yeah.
Yes, that's. I don't know if you can see, but it's a sculpture of two people on a bench reading a book.
Mm.
Then it has these.
Creepy. So there we go. that you have to both. You have a corkboard and a curiosity. And Mark.
And what about the curiosity that you're holding in your hands?
Yes, this is a curiosity. Everything is a curiosity if you think about it. Anything can be a curiosity to somebody, right? Something that's normal to you could be something curious to someone else. So, yeah, so find Val at her channel, which is it's I don't know if it's sad or interesting. It's like you just started and yet you have almost as many subscribers as we do, and we've been doing this for years. So
it definitely picked up a lot faster than I expected, which makes me really, really happy.
there you go.
And also kind of scares me. But I mean, if we like horror, I guess I have to,
Yep.
I'm used to being scared.
Got it. And then Mark is doing his Ask Me Anything on Reddit.
On Reddit and the PF2 subreddit Discord. Both
There you go. You can see it
at the
there.
same time.
At the same time.
Multi-threading.
And then
Multi-threading.
I don't know. I do the same thing. It's like I have to spend weeks preparing for these Kickstarters or big backer kits, and then once it goes, nothing I really can do. It's like sort of did most of the work ahead of time. But tomorrow we will have Jack Packard on. But make sure you pledge, and you can get your Mimic. And if you don't pledge, you can buy it for $50 because they're very expensive, but you get it for free. I don't even know why I'm giving them out for free, because people are like, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, I don't know. I'm nuts. I probably shouldn't have done that, but whatever. Too late now. Anyhow.
Yeah, I have had multiple people say, "Why is Steven giving this for free? It doesn't make sense. I hope it's gonna be okay. Is he gonna do okay? Like, are things gonna be okay for you?" And Steven, I was like, Steven must have figured something out, I guess. But this is a big thing to get for free. Like, it's expensive even to make it. So
Yep, it ain't cheap, but we'll see. Hopefully, we got enough people to back that'll be worthwhile. But we just, well, we'll see. Check it out. Go to yourmonsters.com. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll have Val on again. Although we probably have to change the date because she can never do Wednesdays. So we'll figure it out.
I'm sorry. I can do Wednesdays sometimes when I'm on vacation, and I will be on vacation in 3 weeks.
Really?
There we go, Steven.
Oh, there you go. All right. Well, we'll be around. Then we'll do Wednesdays. So in 3 weeks, when your school's over, right? Is that it? So, all right. Thanks, everyone. See us tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.